Seeing Wei Kai draw near, Nie Yan gradually made his way around his opponent. He continued to slowly move until he was behind Wei Kai, and out of his range of vision. Then he began creeping towards his unsuspecting opponent's back, taking long and unhurried steps as he did so. Wei Kai turned his head, surveying the area in every direction. He was unable to find anything particularly odd. All he could see were endless fields of grass rolling about gently under the influence of the wind, like waves following the ocean breeze. Where the hell could he be? This was the first time Wei Kai had come across a Tempest thief who was actually able to employ stealth to such a perfect extent. It was reasonable to say that the thick grass beneath Wei Kai's feet was an easy place for a thief to expose themselves. Yet, Nie Yan seemed to have no issues hiding in the field with the assistance of stealth. Wei Kai carefully moved forward with his greatsword held close to his chest, keeping it at the ready. He believed that Nie Yan must have been moving at an extremely slow pace, in order to remain unexposed while stealthed. Hence, he came to the conclusion that Nie Yan was most likely some distance ahead of him. However, he remained unaware of the fact that Nie Yan was already behind him, having circled around a long time ago. Approximately 3 meters were between Nie Yan and Wei Kai's back. Suddenly, a large gust of wind blew forth, turning the gentle breeze into a howling gale. Just as the wind began to howl as if he had been waiting for that exact moment, Nie Yan abruptly sprinted forwards. The dagger in his grasp resembled lightning as it struck out, speeding towards Wei Kai's back. The sound of rapid footsteps and howling wind blended together, creating a mess of sounds that was hard for a person to distinguish. The gust of wind also greatly reduced Wei Kai's awareness. Assassinate! Nie Yan's dagger pierced into his target's back, dealing 35 points of damage. Wei Kai never expected his opponent to suddenly appear behind him. He held up the great sword and swept outwards in a wide slash. Nie Yan dodged the strike and managed to reposition himself behind Wei Kai once again. He dashed forward, dagger in hand, and stabbed Wei Kai in the back for the second time, causing him to lose 23 health. Out of the 160 health he had, only a little over 100 points remained. Since the beginning of the fight, Wei Kai had been completely incapable of keeping up with Nie Yan's speed. A berserker's speed relied on their ability to quickly charge forward. A thief's speed, on the other hand, relied greatly on their ability to make agile and nimble movements. The type of movements the two professions specialized in clearly differed. Nie Yan's movements were fast and agile, as he stuck close to Wei Kai's back. In this short period of time, he had already managed to attack Wei Kai 2 times in quick succession. This bastard is as nimble as a monkey. Wei Kai suddenly roared in anger. An aura began radiating from his greatsword as he started spinning around in circles. Whirlwind slash! Wei Kai resembled a top as he spun around with his greatsword. The moment Wei Kai brandished his sword, Nie Yan judged from the movements that Wei Kai was about to execute whirlwind slash, so he quickly retreated back about 2 meters. The greatsword unleashed a strong gust of wind as it streaked through the air. The slash barely grazed past Nie Yan, almost directly hitting him. -9 damage value floated over his head. Despite missing, the whirlwind slash still managed to cause some damage to Nie Yan. Wei Kai's attack finally ended after he had rotated 3 times. He gasped for breath as he thought, this bastard is so quick at dodging. In the split second Wei Kai stopped spinning with his sword, Nie Yan dashed forward, the dagger in his hand aiming straight for Wei Kai's throat. Vital strike. Tang Yao, Li Yang, and the others were watching the match from outside with dumbstruck expressions. Nie Yan's movements were simply a perfection of art. From the moment he escaped Wei Kai's whirlwind slash, to when he attacked with vital strike as it ended, the timing of his every action was at the peak of perfection. After watching Nie Yan, they now understood what PvPing truly meant. It wasn't two opposing sides simply slashing their swords at each other, but rather a battle of awareness and skill. Within his mind, Tang Yao had a sudden flash of insight. He finally understood why Nie Yan said that his timing when casting spells was incorrect. Depending on whether or not a player took action at the right time, 2 entirely different outcomes could arise. He never expected that Nie Yan, whom he had known and grown up with since they were in diapers, would possess this kind of skill. The amount of skill Nie Yan displayed really expanded Tang Yao's horizons. There was a saying, when a scholar disappears for 3 days, view them in a greater light. These words were the most appropriate to describe what Tang Yao was feeling at the moment. Nie Yan's dagger slashed across Wei Kai's throat. -95. Vital strike was still as powerful as ever. In just a few attacks, Wei Kai had already been reduced to a mere 7 health. Meanwhile, Nia Yan's health was still close to full. It was clear which side had established their superiority. It was only then that Wei Kai realized the immense gap between the two of them. Flame Slash. Wei Kai was unwilling to be defeated in such a manner. Just as Nia Yan's vital strike ended, he took advantage of the opening that was revealed and brandished his sword towards Nia Yan. The great sword in his grasp was enveloped by a raging flame as it cleaved downwards in a blazing radiance. The raging heat assaulted his face as it drew closer. The might of a berserker's flame slash was immense. Nia Yan deeply understood this as a result of first-hand experience. He decisively pulled back, in an attempt to avoid the sharp blade. Despite this, Wei Kai still managed to catch up to Nia Yan after suddenly accelerating his pace, and the flame slash struck him right in the middle of his chest. -56. A single damage value emerged, floating atop Nia Yan's head. Nia Yan took the brunt of flame slash. Just when he finally managed to regain his footing, Wei Kai activated his charge skill. He approached with his sword raised, resembling a tank as he came crashing forward. Linear slash. The sword aura formed a straight line as it came slashing down. Nia Yan had only half of his health remaining, and the charge skill had a brief stun duration. If he collided into Wei Kai, the berserker's explosive power would be more than enough to kill Nia Yan in a matter of seconds. So, Nia Yan quickly decided to pull back and retreat again. At that moment, Wei Kai's sword brushed past Nia Yan's face barely by just a few inches. Nia Yan's pupils violently contracted as he sidestepped in an attempt to avoid the attack. He then switched the dagger in his hand to a reverse grip and slashed at Wei Kai's throat. In the end, he was still sent flying back after being struck by Wei Kai's charge. As Nia Yan fell to the ground, his opponent's health bar finally depleted. He staggered back up and stood firmly on both feet, then he gazed at his own health, only 25 points remained. Aha, as expected. Facing a level 3 as a level 2 is a little troublesome. Nia Yan's gaze fell on Wei Kai's corpse. Seeing that he died, Nia Yan put away his dagger. Moments later, the two were transported away from the PvP arena and back to the auditorium. I'm impressed, brat. Who knew you were so capable? Ha ha ha. Tang Yao approached Nia Yan as the latter took off his helmet. The win was a fluke, I just happened to be a little lucky, Nia Yan said. He had almost been killed by Wei Kai as well. In the end, there just wasn't enough time for him to acquire enough equipment and skills. If he had a few more skills at his disposal, then defeating Wei Kai would have taken much less effort. A win is still a win. Not to mention that it was a level 2 versus a level 3. Hey, do you know how to play arcane mages? Teach me how to play them when we get home, okay? Tang Yao said as he rubbed his hands together. It seems Nia Yan really does know a lot. I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to arcane mages. They have various unique skill builds, all of which requires different tactics. I'll teach you what I know, though, Nia Yan replied. When it came to Tang Yao, he wouldn't conceal things and act selfishly. That would be great. Having witnessed Nia Yan's abilities in battle firsthand, Tang Yao held a firm belief in him. Nia Yan gazed at his bank card, which displayed a total of 6,000 credits. He took 3,000 and transferred it to Tang Yao. The 1,600 is what I owe you. As for the other 1,400, consider it me helping recoup your losses. It's only a few thousand credits. How could that kind of money be anything between us brothers? Tang Yao said, sounding a bit displeased. From the start, he had never regarded this money with any importance. Nia Yan bothering about it actually made him feel quite unhappy. True brothers always repay their debts. If you're still unhappy about tonight, you can treat me instead, Nia Yan said with a smile. You've made so much money today, while I barely broke even. Yet you still have the nerve try and freeload off me. You're the one treating me to dinner tonight, end of discussion. Fine then. Eating a small loss is no big deal. What are we eating tonight? In any case, let's head to a restaurant. A bowl of wonton noodle soup is $5. That should be enough to fill you up, Nia Yan said as he stashed away his bank card. I say, aren't you being too much of a miser here? Takes one to know one. Nia Yan laughed. He and Tang Yao could be considered birds of the same feather. Wei Kai and his group walked into the room, having come over from the other area. Tang Yao's expression became grave upon seeing them. He knew that Wei Kai and his people had lost a lot of money today. They wouldn't fly into a fit of rage, would they? A smiling expression still remained on Nia Yan's face. Compared to Tang Yao, he certainly looked a lot calmer. Wei Kai, you wouldn't be trying to shamelessly take back the money you just lost, would you? Tang Yao had inadvertently placed himself in front of Nia Yan. Subconsciously, he still considered Nia Yan to be the same as he was in the past, an easily bullied youth. How could I? Money lost is money lost after all, and money won is also money earned. Even this one knows this much when it comes to gambling. You know, they say that even disputes will eventually lead to friendship, so how about we settle our debts and make up? Young Master Nia and young Master Tang, when you two have time in the future, you should pay a visit to our little establishment. Wei Kai said with a smile. Wei Kai had been drifting through society for many years now. Contrary to what one might expect, he had actually learned how to conduct himself properly during those years. He understood which types of people he should not provoke, and as a result, he did not mention their past grievances at all. We'll be sure to visit when we have the time. Nia Yan nodded his head. Wei Kai, this guy, he also knows when to advance and when to retreat. This one will take his leave first then. Young Master Tang, young Master Nia, you two have fun, Wei Kai said while smiling, bringing his lackeys with him as he departed. What happened to him? Why did he suddenly become so formal and courteous? That's way too abnormal. God damn, it's really making me uncomfortable, Tang Yao said in a baffled tone as he stood by Nia Yan's side. Who knows? Nia Yan let out a faint laugh. Wei Kai and his group had just left the PK lounge when one of his underlings spoke. Boss, why were you treating that brat Nia Yan so politely? Young Master Nia, does he even deserve it? Li Yang walked up to Wei Kai and asked in bewilderment. You know there's a saying, do not bully the youth when they are poor. Have you heard it before? In the future when you judge someone, don't just look at the present, you also need to gaze a little further into the distance, Wei Kai replied. He was able to discern that Nia Yan was a hidden dragon. Sooner or later, he would fly up high into the heavens. It would be in his best interest not to become enemies with such a person. Tien, thanks to Deathblade for the explanation. It's better to bully an old poor person than a young person. If you bully a poor young person, you never know what that young person will grow up to be, and how rich and powerful they might become, DB. Li Yang was still at a loss as to what those words meant. However, in comparison to the rest of them, the boss was much more knowledgeable and experienced, thus he thought, the boss's words are definitely correct, so I'll listen to him. Nia Yan and Tang Yao got into a car and drove off in the direction of a nearby restaurant. What's your in-game name? Tang Yao asked. Nia Yan was a human thief, so Nia Yan was definitely the same race as him. They both started out in the Viridian Empire. Nia Yan, Nirvana Flame. The Nia in Nirvana, and the Yen in Fire, Nia Yan replied. I'll come and find you when I get home then, Tang Yao said. He couldn't help but get excited when he thought of how he could level together with Nia Yan. I'm in the middle of a quest right now, so I can't return to the city, Nia Yan said. He still needed to hand in the quest from Physician Blevins. Moreover, he already had arrangements for future matters, so he would be unable to level together with Tang Yao. Never mind then. How about you just teach me how to play Arcane Mage now, and I'll practice it when I get back home. Tang Yao felt a slight touch of disappointment, though he quickly went back to being excited in a few moments. Arcane mages are basically divided into 3 groups. First, you've got the ones that are the most universal arcane fire mages. They wear all sorts of equipment in order to raise their magic damage. Also, the skills they learn are all similar to ones like Arcane Flame Burst, the type that has a high kill potential. Arcane mages like these are welcome in all teams. Another kind are the Arcane Speed mages. They wear equipment that gives a bonus to movement speed. Once they start moving, they end up being really fast. Add in the Arcane Mage's relatively short cast time, and you've got a build that's great at PvPing. The remaining group is essentially a balance between the last two. So, what path do you intend to take? Nia Yan asked. Tang Yao thought for a while, then started smiling in embarrassment as he asked, which group has skill requirements that are a bit on the lower side? That's definitely going to be an Arcane Fire Mage then. As long as they have good equipment and high damage, all teams will want them. When fighting in a team, all you need to do is keep on attacking and you'll be fine. However, that kind of Arcane Mage has no chance when PvPing. With just a glance, Nia Yan could tell that Tang Yao wanted to be lazy. This scoundrel's brain isn't dumb, he's just too lazy to use it. I won't be able to PvP. That's way too boring. PvPing was just too exciting of an activity for him. Without it, half of the excitement in his life would be gone. Now, Tang Yao felt rather unwilling. It's better if you choose a balance of both then. Before you allocate your points, make sure you consult with me first, Niayen advised. Conviction was designed so that every 5 levels from level 1 to 30 would grant a player 5 stat points, and 1 skill point to allocate. Therefore, for a player, every 5 levels prior to level 30 was a minor watershed in combat power. Alright then, I understand. Tang Yao happily agreed. If he had Niayen helping him allocate his points, then he would be saving himself a lot of trouble. What he hated the most was thinking about these types of complicated matters in the game. I still have some business to attend to after we finish dinner. We'll contact each other in the evening when we get in the game, alright? Niayen said. Alright. After the two had dinner, Tang Yao dropped Niayen off and then went home himself. Having been out for so long, Niayen had wasted a lot of time. Upon arriving back home, he immediately went off to train, then study once again. As Niayen opened up his textbook, various equations ranging from complex mathematics to theoretical physics appeared in front of his eyes. He managed to quickly solve all of them in a surprisingly short amount of time. In light of this development, he noticed that his cognitive abilities had vastly improved since his reincarnation. Though it hadn't reached the point where he developed photographic memory, his memory had still improved quite significantly. Moreover, he sensed that his mind had become sharper as well. For example, he had finished twice the amount of work in half the time when he was studying. In addition, there was an even more astonishing discovery. He felt neither the slightest bit of fatigue nor weariness despite having intensely exercised for quite a long period of time. In fact, after every training session, he felt his strength increasing in small yet noticeable increments. Niayen was quite satisfied with his current body. As long as he received the proper amount of nourishment, it would rapidly transform and rise in stature similar to how it had in the past during his senior year of high school. However, there was only one complication: the nutritional supplements he required were simply too expensive. At present, the expenses weren't something he could handle. In fact, the lowest quality nutritional supplements had a price tag of around $500, while medium quality ones could cost upwards of several thousand. Sadly, his household carried only 2 portions, one of which he had already used earlier in the morning. Finally, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Niayen entered the game once more. Upon reconnecting, he discovered a nearly endless swarm of water spiders skittering around him in all directions. It appeared that every single monster in the vicinity had respawned. Fortunately, players were invulnerable for the first 30 seconds upon reconnecting. They would appear in an ethereal state as if they were a spirit. In this state, they would not only be unable to attack, but monsters would be unable to attack them as well. Niayen took a detour around these water spiders and swam away from the area where he had concealed himself. After 30 seconds had passed, he began farming the spiders in the surrounding area once more. Currently, he had already gathered 25 fine silks and 5 rare fine silks which came from the water spider leader the day prior. With his current hunting speed, Niayen estimated that it would take around 3 more hours for him to complete this quest. When I return to town, I'll definitely have to make more money. That way, when I come across another gathering quest like this one, I can just buy the needed materials from the market instead. With this plan, Niayen would have no need to go through the tedious labor of gathering the materials himself. Another hour passed by, and Niayen received a notification. It was from Yao Yao. Niayen, Nirvana Flame, where are you right now? I'm still farming water spiders. Why, you need something? He didn't stop killing water spiders, even while he chatted with Yao Yao. After activating Assassinate with his right hand, he stabbed a nearby water spider with his dagger. As it died, it miserably flipped over and curled up. My friends and I went to the Treant Forest earlier this morning. Oh. Huh, you're not going to ask how it went? There's no need for me to ask. Regarding this Treant Forest, Niayen already understood this instance quite well. In the past, it had taken him and his friends 5 attempts to pass the instance. If the party didn't have warriors with at least 60 defense and 220 health, they wouldn't stand a chance. Therefore, it would be impossible for them to clear the instance. Alright, it was just like you said. Our party was completely wiped. We didn't even manage to get to the Treant King. But never mind that, one of my friends wants to meet you. We're gonna try and clear the forest again tomorrow. So, can you join us then? Come back when your fighters upgrade their defense, then we'll talk. I'll see if I have the time by then. However, make sure you tell your friend this. In exchange for joining you guys in the Treant Forest, I want to act as the party leader. Furthermore, every single thief item that drops will go to me. There was a rather decent thief cloak that dropped from the monsters within the Treant forest, one that Niayen wanted. You want to be the party leader? Why? I don't trust anyone else with leading a team. This. I'll have to ask. Giving every thief drop to you is going to be a bit difficult. After all, we have a thief in our party as well. Yao Yao's party was set so that drops were distributed equally among their members. If your team captain doesn't agree to it, then so be it. Niayen really didn't want to make things awkward and difficult for Yao Yao on purpose. However, in Niayen's eyes, this thief in Yao Yao's party was especially unpleasant. I'll go ask our captain. Niayen's harsh demands lowered Yao Yao's impression of him by quite a bit. The team captain Yao Yao spoke of was a woman named Yulan, Blue Feather, a berserker. Niayen's first impression of this woman was her large pair of breasts. Her berserker armor, which was tightly fitted around her body, accentuated her curves particularly in the chest area. Moreover, the gap in her armor also exposed an extreme amount of cleavage. When he recalled this memory of her, he couldn't help but slightly tremble. However, Niayen would never dare to provoke Yulan. Normally, she was quite friendly and amiable. However, if someone were to irritate her, then her fiery temper would become as large as her breasts. He remembered that there was a time when another player decided to tease her. Yulan ended up chasing and killing that player until he dropped 5 levels. It was because of such things that this beauty could only be gazed at from afar. She could neither be toyed with nor treated with disrespect. Otherwise, one would most likely find himself being the one toyed with instead. Also, there's one other thing. Other than the thief equipment, I also want the jewel that the Treant King drops when it dies. Niayen said without a hint of politeness or restraint. We all just want to try and run the dungeon together. But you? How can you act in such a selfish way? Yao Yao stomped her feet and ended the call. She was furious and frustrated to the point where glistening tears began to flow from her eyes. After fighting and completing their quests together yesterday, she noticed that they actually matched each other quite well. Because of this, she felt that Niayen was a rather decent person and even wanted to get to know him better and befriend him. Yet she never thought that, again and again, Niayen would continuously crush her good impression of him that she held deep within her heart. Niayen indifferently smiled. Sometimes attempting to explain was superfluous. Yao Yao hung up the call in anger. Niayen sighed softly. If they were to run an instance together, then it would be better to make some things clear at the start. Otherwise, when the time came, disputes would certainly arise. At the Telic Town transfer point, Yulan's team had assembled together in the area. In total, there were 19 individuals gathered together. Among them, the most conspicuous were Yulan, who was wearing blue armor, and Yao Yao, who was wearing a white-colored mage robe while standing in the center. Like the stars gathering around the moon, everyone there had gathered around, placing these two beauties at the center. Naturally, the team had other decent-looking women as well. However, compared to the two beauties in the center, they could only entirely serve as the background. With her tall curvaceous figure and long slender legs that were almost too alluring, Yulan had grown up to be quite a beauty. Her looks could be rated at the highest quality. Despite appearing to be only in her 20s, she gave off the full charm of an adult woman. Though the main reason for this was her large voluptuous chest that easily attracted one's eyes. On the other hand, Yao Yao was another sort of beauty. With her whole body covered by a white robe, along with her delicate oval-shaped face, and her hair that was tied in a ponytail, she looked pure and beautiful. Anyone who looked at her would have been moved by her charm. Yao Yao, what did he say? Yulan asked when she saw that Yao Yao had disconnected her voice chat. He said that if we're gonna go together, then he wants to be the party leader, get all the thief equipment drops, and he also wants the jewel that drops from the Treant King. Yao Yao's face was nearly red from anger. Originally she had been quite excited about having Niayen as a good friend, and introducing him to Yulan. Never did she expect that Niayen was actually that kind of person. Yao Yao, you're just really too naive. These kinds of people are everywhere. He's definitely just a weak liar who's trying to cheat us out of our drops, said a thief by her side. He was Chenbo, a rather handsome man who appeared to be around 20 years old. Yao Yao wanted to refute those words on Niayen's behalf, but after giving it a second thought, she realized that she was too angry to bother. She didn't know why, but for some reason, she still somewhat sided with Niayen in her heart. After all, he was actually quite strong. Not to mention that, unlike Chenbo, she truly didn't think he was trying to scam them for equipment or anything that intolerable. That's not necessarily true. He already knows that the Treant King drops a jewel, which means that he's definitely gone to the Treant forest before. Not only that but cleared it as well. The fact that he was able to make it through the instance with a party of his own is more than enough to prove his ability to work in a team. Moreover, he's significantly more experienced than us. So it wasn't that excessive for him to request to act as party leader, nor was it excessive for him to receive both the thief drops and the jewel. Since he bluntly stated his demands to Yao Yao, it shows that he did so with a clear conscience. Yulan patted Yao Yao's shoulders. Yao Yao, you don't need to mind it. After listening to Yulan's words, Yao Yao revealed a relieved smile. Though she was still a little angry at Nia Yan, in her heart she was already feeling significantly better. Seeing the beautiful smiling expression on her face, Chenbo felt his heart sink. He didn't know why, but the sudden appearance of this Nia Yan gave him a sense of foreboding. We'll rent a piece of bronze-grade fighter equipment for tomorrow. Oh yeah, make sure to tell him that we're running the instance tomorrow and that he's invited to join us, Yulan said. She had already begun her arrangements. I'm still gonna ignore him for the rest of the morning. I'll talk to him again in the afternoon. Yao Yao pouted. Alright, you can contact him again in the afternoon. Yulan nodded while smiling. During all this, Nia Yan continued to kill water spiders. His luck wasn't bad at all, considering that 3 fine silks had dropped in succession. Looking in his bag, he already had 29 of them. Only one more was needed to finish his quest. Nevertheless, it appeared that hunting monsters early in the morning had its own benefits. For one, the drop rate for various items was comparatively higher. After killing another water spider, Nia Yan reached out with his right hand to collect the loot. What did I get? As he held up the item to get a closer look, he realized that it was a thief's skill book. Skill book, Lacerate. Description: thieves can use their daggers to slice into an enemy, causing them to bleed profusely. Targets hit by this attack will take bleed damage every second. Requirements: action, requires weapon. Properties: cuts into a target creating an open wound. Attack +1. Causes 5 points of bleeding every second for 6 seconds. Cooldown, 30 seconds. Restrictions: thief, warrior, paladin, can be learned by any faction. Lacerate was a basic skill that synergized well with Assassinate. It could be used to follow up after Assassinate, causing additional lacerations that would make an enemy bleed for 5 health every second for 6 seconds. However, as for its killing power, the damage from Lacerate, even including its additional bleed damage, was slightly weaker than Vital Strike. Even so, it was still a considerably decent skill. Presently, this exact skill was what Nia Yan lacked the most. After learning the skill, Nia Yan turned to face another water spider. Suddenly he received another notification from his voice chat. This little girl, she's sending another call request. Nia Yan answered the call. However, there was an awkward silence between the two that lingered on for what seemed like an eternity. You know, I originally planned to ignore you and never talk to you again, but I'm an adult who's willing to be magnanimous, so I won't bother stooping to your level and arguing with you. My party is going to run the Treant Forest tomorrow. So are you going to come or not? Nia Yan couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile after imagining Yao Yao's adorable pouting expression. Tomorrow? No need to explain yourself if you've other business to attend to tomorrow. Just tell me whether you're coming or not. Yes or no? Nia Yan was interrupted by Yao Yao just as he was about to speak. Alright. Just tell me the time for tomorrow, and I'll definitely be there. Nia Yan smiled helplessly. When it came to this little missus, he had already thoroughly given up. Now that sounds better. Good. We'll call you over tomorrow morning. What, are you going to be busy? Yao Yao was quite pleased with Nia Yan's reply. She immediately hung up, not even giving him a chance to speak further. Little boy, we'll see if I can't discipline you, Yao Yao thought proudly to herself. When she imagined the distressed look on Nia Yan's face, she couldn't help but giggle to herself. Doot. Upon hearing the sound of the call ending, Nia Yan could only smile bitterly. It seems that tomorrow I'll have to go for a run in the Treant Forest. With the distraction gone, Nia Yan continued to kill water spiders while steadily speeding up his pace. After receiving the Lacerate skill, a significant increase in his hunting speed could be seen. By attacking with Assassinate and then following up with Lacerate, he was able to effortlessly kill a water spider. Ding! A melodious jingle could be heard as a system notification rang out. Nia Yen had risen to level 3. After a while, he finished collecting the 30 fine silks. I'm finally done. Nia Yen swam back towards the island to hand in his quest. System, player Flying Stone has deposited 1 silver into your personal storage. Expert, the strategy you provided us with was really useful. Thanks to it, we've managed to clear the fallen shaman camp. As such, the other silver has already been deposited into your storage. Stone informed Nia Yen in excitement. I've received it. Is there anything else you need? With the 2 silvers from Stone plus his recent earnings, he had almost 3 silvers. With this, he could be considered to have some capital. One of my friends said that they're gonna form a party to hunt in the Agmota Muddy Wetlands the day after tomorrow. Do you wanna come? Stone asked with a hint of expectation. I'm going to be busy the day after tomorrow. The Agmota Muddy Wetlands was a somewhat difficult instance. Though seeing as Stone's party was able to clear the fallen shaman camp, it seemed like their strength wasn't too bad. Ah, never mind then. Expert, would you happen to have a guide for the Agmota Muddy Wetlands as well? Ah, do you think I'm some kind of god? Agmota Muddy Wetlands is the most difficult level 3 instance. You think I'm able to make up a guide for it so quickly? He couldn't keep offering to sell guides for dungeon instances. Otherwise, he'd end up attracting too much suspicion from others. Besides, it would be better for him to wait for a good offer, which would inevitably come after Stone and his team were wiped during their first few attempts. Ah, I'm sorry. I was just thinking out of habit, haha. Stone laughed in embarrassment. Nia Yen and Stone briefly exchanged a few more words before hanging up the call. By this time, he had already arrived back at the island. There, he found Physician Blevins still fishing by the lakeshore. Youngster, how many bundles of fine silk did you manage to collect? Physician Blevins asked after seeing that Nia Yen had returned. Esteemed senior, here are the 30 bundles of fine silk I've gathered. I'd like to request that senior have a look, Nia Yen replied in a polite and formal tone that was standard when turning in quests. Youngster, I must thank you for your generosity. Please take these 30 silk cloths with you as a means to repay your kindness. Furthermore, I have also decided to impart upon you a skill. System, Physician Blevins wishes to teach you Intermediate Combat Medic. Will you learn it? Nia Yen felt his heart skip a beat. This was exactly the skill he wanted to learn. Without showing the slightest hint of hesitation, he immediately hit accept. System, the Great Mage, Blevins, has taught you a skill. You have learned Intermediate Combat Medic. Intermediate Combat Medic allows the player to create and use intermediate combat bandages while in combat. Requires 10 silk cloth. Each bandage replenishes 20 health every second for 10 seconds. Healing can be interrupted after 3 seconds of applying bandages. Bandages can also be used on other party members. 10 silk cloths were equivalent to 20 coppers. Although it was a tad expensive, this was still a skill that could save lives in a moment of crisis. System, the task Physician Blevins has entrusted you with is 20% complete. Nia Yen stared blankly at this notification. Reasonably enough, he believed that the quest would have ended after handing in the 30 fine silks, but reality proved otherwise. What the hell? Why is it only 20% complete? Youngster, 30 bundles of fine silk is still far from being enough. I still need much more. Would you be willing to help me find more? I'm willing to aid you in your task, Nia Yen hurriedly replied. It appeared that the combat medic skill was merely one of the rewards in this lengthy quest. He was clueless as to what other quest rewards would lie further ahead. Esteemed senior, here are 5 rare fine silks that I'd chanced upon, though I am unsure of their usefulness. Fine silk becomes rare fine silk after it has undergone processing. Each bundle of rare fine silk is equivalent to 6 bundles of common fine silk, the old man explained to Nia Yen. Afterwards, the old man inquired further, so youngster, are you willing to give them to me? Yes, Nia Yen replied. 5 rare fine silks were equivalent to 30 ordinary fine silks. He had been killing water spiders for so long, yet he never once thought to hunt water spider leaders despite them giving better drops. However, this was to be expected, as killing a leader-ranked water spider was truly too dangerous of a task. In any case, it wasn't something Nia Yen could simply accomplish by himself. System, you've received 30 silk cloths. System, you've received Headhunter's silver leather armor. System, the task Physician Blevins has entrusted you with is 40% complete. Nia Yen felt a pleasant surprise after reading the second system announcement. After opening his bag, he found a silver-colored piece of armor within his inventory. Who knew what kind of animal hide was used to make this piece of leather armor? It was tough, durable, and radiated a silver-white luster. Furthermore, it didn't need to be appraised. Let's take a look at its properties. Headhunter's silver leather armor, silver. Level requirement, level 5. Properties, defense 13 to 17, strength +5, dexterity +5. Weight, 3 pounds. User restriction, thief, paladin, can only be equipped by the righteous faction who protects the light. The properties of silver-grade equipment were at least 30% higher than normal equipment. Furthermore, they also included 2 additional properties. With current market prices, Niayen estimated that he could sell this piece of armor for at least 5 silvers if he put it up in the auction house. Niayen's equipment would improve significantly upon reaching level 5, as he would finally be able to replace his current equipment with the horn dagger and headhunter's silver leather armor. With these thoughts in mind, he suddenly felt more motivation to level up. This old man sure is generous with his quest rewards, and 60% of the quest still remains unfinished. If I try to farm 90 more fine silks myself though, I'd end up working myself to death. I'll just spend some money to buy the materials off the auction house instead. 90 fine silks, that would be about 3 silvers. Looking at it this way, I'm still a long ways off from having enough money to spend freely. How can I make some money fast? Niayen was trying to rack his brain for a solution to this difficult problem. Eventually, he remembered a certain online guide that he viewed in the past. It was then that Niayen had a sudden flash of insight. Back when the game was first released, the most worthless item in the game was a drop by the name of bat teeth. It was a material used for crafting level 0 beginner weapons. Even more laughable, these weapons would come out with pitifully low attack. Thus, for the most part, no one, aside from the occasional player who would purchase a few to level up their blacksmithing after learning the skill, would buy the bat teeth. Other than that, there were just no other players who would bother buying any. Not to mention, even if you sold 5 stacks of them 100 bat teeth to an NPC, you would only receive a single copper. For these reasons, there were quite a few bat teeth littered across the ground in the level 3 bat spawning area, as few would bother picking them up. Many players would rather throw them away than have this trash material take up space in their bag. As a result, only the poorest of players would bother picking them up and selling them to the NPC stores. Niayen, however, knew these bat teeth had another use. They could be given to a high-level blacksmith in Kalwar City after triggering his hidden quest. In exchange for 10 bat teeth, half of a full stack, you would receive a little bit of experience and 1 copper. Furthermore, you could exchange an unlimited amount of bat teeth with this blacksmith. As more and more players discovered this blacksmith, the market price for these bat teeth rose accordingly. This sort of business is actually doable. Niayen couldn't help but have this thought. All he needed to do was head to the level 3 bat spawn area and advertise that he's buying a stack of bat teeth for 1 copper. He'd soon have a massive amount of bat teeth delivered right to his doorstep. Afterwards, he could exchange all of them with that blacksmith in Kalwar City and receive his quest reward. This way he could make a profit while also leveling up at the same time. How could he have forgotten something like this? Niayen no longer hesitated and immediately ran off towards Telek town. After returning to the town, he retrieved his 2 silvers from the storage, threw all his unwanted equipment up in the auction house, and then finally went to the appraiser to appraise the soft leather gloves that he looted from the golden electric eel. The gloves ended up being a level 0 equipment with an additional property of dexterity +2. The properties were fairly decent for level 0 equipment. Niayen put the gloves on. They were the first piece of bronze-grade equipment that he could actually equip. The gloves radiated a faint cyan glow until Niayen turned off the visual effects in equipment settings. It was still best if he kept a low profile. If his equipment was too conspicuous, then he would very likely be followed after leaving the city. After finishing up his business in town, Niayen went through the transport point to Kalwar City. From there he went directly to the Cade Smithy within the city center. Kalwar City housed over 60 smithies that offered various blacksmithing services. You could buy everything from large siege equipment to weapons, armor, and even horseshoes. Only the Cade Smithy differed from this norm. Of all the smithies in the city, it was the most unremarkable. It was the high-level blacksmith, Cade, who issued the quest to gather bat teeth. In his former life, the player who first discovered it was a paladin. After discovering that this blacksmith, Cade, gave out such a quest, he immediately bought a large amount of bat teeth and exchanged them with Cade for a large amount of profit and experience. He wanted to keep this his own secret, so he worked especially low-key. However, as this paladin purchased an increasingly large amount of bat teeth, other players began to grow suspicious. What could this paladin possibly need so many bat teeth for? Afterwards, a thief ended up shadowing him to the Cade smithy, and the secret became publicized. However, by that time, most players were already over level 10. The price of bat teeth had increased, and no players were willing to sell them for a low price now. It already wasn't worth it for them to go back to the area and farm bat teeth for the quest. When those level 10 players recalled all the bat teeth they threw away in the past, they could only helplessly shake their heads and sigh. As for the paladin who had first discovered this hidden quest, he had already earned overflowing basins full of money from doing this quest in secret for such a long time. However, at present, the only person who knew of this hidden quest was Nia Yen and Nia Yen alone. Nia Yen entered the Cade smithy. Its shop front was extremely narrow, nevertheless, it was still one of the many smithies designated by the Viridian Empire military. As Nia Yen entered the smithy, he saw an NPC apprentice blacksmith. "Dear customer, may I ask if there is anything you require?" The apprentice came up and asked. "I'm looking for Mr. Cade." "I'm sorry, but my master has already gone out," the apprentice replied apologetically. "I have some business with him. May I ask when he'll be back?" The apprentice's reply came as no surprise. This was precisely how the hidden quest was triggered. "May I ask what business you have with my master? I can pass along a message." The apprentice sized up Nia Yen, a sharp expression filling his eyes. "Please let Mr. Cade know that I can help him with the current problem he's facing. Please wait a moment." The apprentice hastily ran out the door. After a while, the smithing apprentice came back with a tall and sturdy-looking blacksmith in his middle ages. He had messy sideburns, and his upper body was completely bare. His whole body was robust and covered in muscles from head to toe. Not only that, but his skin had also turned a dark shade of red after being exposed to the heat of a blazing furnace all year round. "Mr. Blacksmith, rumors say you've met with some worrisome troubles. May I ask what they might be? Perhaps I might be able to help you out," Nia Yen said, and then thought to himself, "There should be no problems with my wording here. Coming this autumn, the situation in Hilton's stronghold will become more and more intense. We need much more weapons in order to meet the demands of the soldiers on the front lines. I need materials, a great amount of them. And at present, I'm clueless as to how I can amass such a large amount of these materials," Blacksmith Cade said in a distressed manner. "May I inquire what kind of materials you need? Perhaps I can help you find them." "I need a large quantity of bat teeth. I'm willing to purchase a stack for 2 coppers if you have them," Blacksmith Cade replied. For Cade, these bat teeth were crucial materials he was in desperate need of. NPCs didn't have much intelligence, they simply followed the instructions given by the main system AI. They could only issue and receive quests. Hidden NPCs like Blacksmith Cade would not announce their quest publicly. "System, do you wish to accept Blacksmith Cade's request?" "Yes. System, you have accepted Blacksmith Cade's request. Please be at ease. I will definitely help you find these materials." Nia Yen reassured Blacksmith Cade, then went through a transport point to the town of Mordor. There was a large expanse near Mordor where a large amount of level 3 bat monsters congregated. With about several hundred people in it, the town was quite crowded. Recruiting people level 3 or higher for level 3 instance, Warrior's Tomb. I'm a mage that deals over 30 magic damage. Recruiting people to hunt bats. I'm a level 3 fire elementalist. Players were looking to form parties. Some would end up joining parties, while others would be buzzing around like houseflies. Those who had good equipment would often have an easy time finding a party to join. Meanwhile, those with poor equipment would find themselves being ignored by most parties. Parties formed one after another and left the town. It was currently early morning in the game. Once players formed a party, they would farm monsters for the whole day, only disbanding late in the evening. Nia Yen had set up a booth near the player storehouse. There he put up a sign that read, "Buying bat teeth. 1 stack for 1 copper." He had just put up the sign, yet there were already many players gathering around him. Many of them always hung around this area hunting bats, thus their bags were filled with many bat teeth. Once they gathered 100 of them, they would go back and sell them to the NPCs. 1 copper wasn't much, but no matter how insignificant the amount was, it was still money. Besides, Nia Yen buying bat teeth for 1 copper per stack was a much better deal than selling the materials to an NPC. The players thought, huh? These bat teeth litter the ground everywhere. I can actually sell a garbage drop like this for such a high price? Doing the math, I can make a decent profit selling these bat teeth. The everyday income for the average players wasn't very high. Add on their need to purchase equipment and healing items, most players would only have 10 or 20 coppers on them at most. Naturally, they were all very willing when they learned that they could make a few extra coppers off of Nia Yen. Hey, brother! I have 3 stacks of bat teeth here. Do you want them? Of course. If you have any, I'll take them, Nia Yen said while nodding his head. After briefly sweeping a glance at the 10 or so people circling around him, he noticed that 5 or 6 of them were already organizing their inventories. Several others were hastily opening up their personal storages, fearful that Nia Yen had collected enough bat teeth and no longer wanted any more. What are these bat teeth used for? Some players probed and asked. I'm using them to level up my beginner blacksmithing skill, Nia Yen would reply. How does leveling up the beginner blacksmithing skill require so many bat teeth? I have 10 or so friends who are all learning blacksmithing as well, and they're having me buy the materials all at once. If you're going to sell, then sell already. If you're not, then stop standing around and blocking the line, Nia Yen replied indifferently. Here, I have 2 stacks. Nia Yen glanced at the trade window. He put in 2 coppers and then hit confirm. Here are mine. There are 3 stacks. One after another, players continuously made trades with Nia Yen. Those who had more would sell around 3 or 4 stacks, while those with less would sell only 1 or 2 stacks. There were even a few who hadn't traded anything. They stood off to the side and gazed helplessly. They were the ones who had either already sold all their bat teeth to the NPCs, or thrown them away. In either case, they all stood there filled with regret. While trading, Nia Yen was also depositing the bat teeth into his personal storage. His bag only had 20 slots, and simply didn't have enough space to hold all the materials. More and more people came to trade with Nia Yen. The players who had sold their bat teeth would pass this information on to their friends. Then those friends who had bat teeth would come over one after another, bringing their bat teeth with them. Before long, Nia Yen had collected over 200 stacks of bat teeth. Nia Yen hurriedly made an announcement. Everyone, please wait a moment. All of you, please wait. I'm already out of money. Let me get some more money from my friends first. I'll be back in just a moment, 15 minutes at most. Everyone, please come back after 15 minutes, I'll be back here by then. I still have some here. Wait. There's mine too. Nia Yen pushed through the crowd as he walked out. Finally, he took a deep breath. These players are way too enthusiastic. Nia Yen arrived back at Kalwar City after passing through the transport point. As soon as he arrived, he turned a corner and entered a nearby alleyway. There he activated stealth after making sure no one was following him. Only after making 7 or 8 detours through the alleyways, did he finally arrive at the Cade Smithy. This was a lesson learned from the past. He definitely wouldn't allow the location of the Cade Smithy to be disclosed. Nia Yen would retrieve the bat teeth he had collected from the other player in batches, then transport and sell them to Cade. A while later, over 200 stacks of teeth were sold for 4 silvers. 2 silvers had become 4 in only half an hour. In addition, he also gained 900 experience. Nia Yen noticed his experience bar had already risen to 5% when he glanced at it. He went back to Mordor after handing over all the bat teeth, and continued buying more. Those players who saw Nia Yen return, fearful that he might soon leave again, immediately lined up and waited to trade. Mordor was bustling with an unusually high amount of activity due to Nia Yen's actions. Everyone, there's no need to feel anxious. After I buy everything I need this morning, I'll be coming back around 8 in the evening to buy some more. Nia Yen issued an announcement to the crowd. These players would most likely amass quite a few bat teeth after farming monsters for the whole day up till 8 in the evening. By the time he had purchased over 200 stacks, the amount of bat teeth being traded had gradually lessened. After purchasing another 100 stacks, Nia Yen saw there were no more players coming to trade. Thus he went through the transport point back to Kalwar City. 2 thieves were following him closely. Nia Yen had bought these bat teeth all in one go, yet he still had the appearance of someone who looked like they still hadn't had enough. With that sort of behavior, trying not to attract the suspicion of others was difficult in itself. Nia Yan's mouth curved into a faint smile when he detected these thieves attempting to track him. At present, those who were able to track him haven't even been born yet. Nia Yen turned a corner into an alleyway and activated stealth, very quickly disappearing from sight. By the time those thieves made their way over to the alleyway, all traces of Nia Yen were gone. Where'd that guy go? I can't find him. Brother, what do you think that guy's gonna do with all the bat teeth he bought? Who the hell knows? It definitely isn't for leveling his blacksmithing though, that's for certain. There's no way in hell blacksmithing would take that many bat teeth to level up, even if he's buying them for his friends. Not to mention he's even coming back for more in the evening. Let's wait until next time. Those two thieves who stood at the corner spoke a few more words, then turned around and left. Gradually, a silhouette emerged from a wall not far from where those two thieves had been. It was Nia Yen coming out of stealth. He had been just 2 meters away from them at most, yet they hadn't detected anything in the slightest. Nia Yen smiled coldly as he gazed at the backs of their retreating figures. It was simply wishful thinking, believing that they could pry into his secret. He wouldn't be so stupid as to reveal blacksmith Cade's location. He turned around and went further into the alleyway. Having exchanged all 300 stacks of bat teeth with Cade, Nia Yen now had 7 silvers in his pockets. With the current average level of the player base, this could be considered a massive sum of money. He then ran to Carter Town and Yim Town to purchase more bat teeth. After exchanging them with Cade, he had a total of 26 silvers. He now understood what it felt like to be rolling in money. Ah, how refreshing. The amount of money a player had early in the game was essential to their growth in the future. That paladin from his past life had made over 10 gold coins from this quest. Earning such an amount seemed inconceivable to him when he first entered the game, but now he knew it was possible firsthand. Those players who knew about Nia Yen buying bat teeth for a high price would never imagine he was selling them to an NPC. Thus he would be able to make even more money down the road. A person's confidence would change when they had money, and Nia Yen was no exception. He immediately went off to the largest auction house in Kalwar City. The equipment and weapons being auctioned there were all at least bronze grade or higher. In addition, there were also various uncommon skill books and materials being auctioned off as well. For the most part, players who traded here were those who would often partake in raids. These 3 skill books taught only level 0 thief skills, however the market price for them was roughly 20 coppers each. Thieves would be very poor when first starting out in the game. In that respect, thieves and mages could be considered fellow sufferers in the same boat, as both professions would end up spending practically all their wealth buying skill books. Thieves were a profession that couldn't survive without skills, but each skill book was quite expensive. Thus they had no choice but to bear through the hard times, living frugally each day so they could purchase a single skill book. Sometimes these players would even be forced to continue wearing their old worn-out equipment, just so that they could save a few coppers. Even the thief players who were somewhat wealthy in real life would sometimes have no choice but to head to the transaction platforms and spend some money to buy in-game currency. A thief's true power, their formidable ability to control a fight, would only emerge if a player could endure through these hard times and buy the skills they needed. Nia Yen had also endured these hardships before, slowly making his way up bit by bit before being reincarnated. Though he was able to easily buy his way through this barrier in his current life, his skill bar looked that much less empty after learning those 3 skills. He pulled up the page for skill books again to see if there were any other skills up for sale. As he browsed, the name of an uncommon skill caught his eye. Skill book, Parry. Skill description, parry an opponent's attack with your weapon. Required, action, requires weapon. Skill cooldown, 30s. User restriction, thief, warrior, paladin, can be learned by any faction. Nia Yen couldn't forget this skill. It was something that every close combat profession yearned for, the most valuable asset of any melee profession. It didn't matter what kind of situation a player was in, whether PvPing or fighting a monster, being able to parry an attack was a lifesaver. Parry was a skill that had a 1 in 10,000 chance of dropping from demonic monsters. Only 1 or 2 players had learned the skill when he participated in a 100-man battle full of level 60s in the past. This exemplified how rare of a skill it was. Its value was only slightly less than the skill book for Vital Strike. It didn't matter though, he would buy it anyway. Nia Yen glanced at the current bid, 2 silvers. Not only that but the bidding price was constantly rising by at least 50 coppers each time. The ones who made bids on these uncommon and rare skills were usually wealthy players, teams, or maybe even guild leaders. More often times than not, they wouldn't mind spending a few silvers for the sake of a single skill book. 2 silvers and 50 coppers, 3 silvers and 50 coppers. The fierce bidding on the parry skill book attracted the attention of many players. It's a rare skill. No wonder the bids are so high. 3 silvers, it was roughly the same amount that a team would make after clearing a common level 3 dungeon. Even then the most they could earn would be 5 silvers. After a short while, the bidding came to a halt. The auctioned item would go to the highest bidder if 10 minutes passed without any further bids. 4 silvers, Nia Yen placed his bid. He was determined to get this parry skill book. 4 silvers and 50 coppers. He didn't know who, but someone increased the bid yet again. This price could terrify the overwhelming majority of players in the game. At this moment, it was simply a matter of which side was more willing to throw their money away. 5 silvers. Nia Yen increased his bid once more. No matter what, he'd still have many more opportunities to earn money in the future. This amount wasn't something he'd be lacking in the slightest. God damn. Who the hell is that rich? To spend that much money for a single parry skill book. All of the players at the auction were already discussing it in private. A single thief skill book being auctioned for such a price. This was just too terrifying. There truly are a lot of wealthy people. The price didn't increase for a while. It seemed the other party had been scared off by Nia Yen's bid. The parry skill book entered his bag after 10 minutes passed. After learning the skill, he bought a vial of poison used by thieves to coat their daggers for 30 coppers. It could be applied 3 times before running out, and would cause an enemy to lose 10% of their defense after being poisoned. Finally, he was done purchasing everything he needed. Furthermore, the items he had auctioned earlier had been sold. Currently he still had 16 silvers remaining in his pockets. Despite having learned so many new skills, Nia Yen didn't need to practice with them at all. This was because he was highly familiar with both the thief skills and the profession itself. He could use these skills with ease right off the bat, thus his strength had increased significantly after learning them. Nia Yen now had a lot more confidence when comparing himself to those who had started when the game first released. Using the game knowledge of his past life, he could now pave a path for his future development. Then in the future he could walk down this path unobstructed. Afterwards he crafted the silk cloths in his bag into bandages, which could be used in case of emergency. He also bought bread and other useful items that could replenish his strength. Furthermore, he now had a bag full of basic health potions and basic recovery potions. Intermediate combat medic, skill mastery 10/500. Should I head off and level then? Nia Yen immediately thought of several leveling locations that were very suited for thieves to train in. I suppose I'll check Spirit Myth Pond first. There should be a few treasure chests there, not to mention the drops aren't too bad either. Though I don't know whether or not the chests have already been found by someone else. Ding! While contemplating this matter, Nia Yen suddenly received a notification. System, player Yao Zi, Young Sparrow Hawk, has sent you a friend request. Nia Yen, it's me, Tang Yao said in an anxious tone. What's the matter? Nia Yen asked. The anxiousness in Tang Yao's tone caused him to furrow his brows. I've been cornered at Levin Hills, Tang Yao said depressingly. The only person he could think of who could help him out at this moment was Nia Yen. What, who's got you cornered? People from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild. There's at least 20 of them. All 5 of my teammates were killed by those bastards. Only I alone managed to escape. If it wasn't for Lei Zi, Young Thunder, shielding me, then I would have died as well. Right now those guys are blocking the only 2 exits from Levin Hills. Lei Zi was Nia Yen and Tang Yao's classmate in middle school. However, unlike Tang Yao, he wasn't very close to Nia Yen, as they had only made brief contact in the past. Radiant Sacred Flame. Nia Yen had actually heard of this guild before. It was a large guild, similar to Victorious Return. In the past, around the time he had reached level 60, Conviction's developers implemented the guild ranking system. Radiant Sacred Flame was one of the guilds that had ranked in the top 60s. Even as the years went by they never fell below the top 100. Hide well. I'll be there in just a moment, Nia Yen advised. Tang Yao would very likely be killed if he was late by even a few moments. Dying meant the loss of a level. This would be an extremely unfortunate outcome for Tang Yao. Nia Yen entered a scroll shop and bought 5 return scrolls, 5 basic haste scrolls, and 5 basic strength scrolls. He only needed to give Tang Yao a return scroll and the latter would be able to be safely teleported to the nearest city or town. As for the other scrolls, he prepared them in case he needed them later on. A single return scroll would cost upwards of 30 coppers. As for the basic haste and strength scrolls, they were slightly cheaper at 20 coppers each. Both these scrolls had a duration of 30 seconds. Basic haste scrolls would increase movement speed by 20%, whereas basic strength scrolls would increase strength by 5 points. For players who weren't so wealthy, these scrolls were items that many of them couldn't bear to use. No one would dare act like Nia Yen and buy this many scrolls in one go. He also bought more basic health potions in preparation for the future. Nia Yen put away the scrolls and hastily made his way towards the nearest transport point. He was equipped with bronze-grade equipment that gave stat bonuses such as dexterity +5 and move speed +2. As a result, his current movement speed vastly outstripped the average player. He quickly arrived at the transport point and teleported straight to Link Town. After emerging in the town, he immediately sprinted off towards the north. How'd you guys get into a scuffle with them in the first place? We met a leader-class monster in the area where we were hunting level 3 mobs. While we were fighting it, a group of people came over and tried to forcefully steal the kill from us, just because they had the advantage in numbers. In the end, our party's thief managed to grab a piece of bronze equipment when the leader-class monster died. Those guys weren't willing to accept that, though, so they tried to kill us afterwards. Now 3 of them have their names marked red. Tang Yao seemed to be out of breath while he said all this. It appeared that he was still hiding from his pursuers. How much longer do you think you can hold out for? Luckily, Levin Hills is a pretty wide area. So as long as I keep moving around, they shouldn't even think about catching me within the next hour, especially considering how few people they have. That is, unless they call for more reinforcements. 1 hour is enough. I'll make sure to thoroughly have fun with them. Nia Yen was beginning to grow restless. He was equipped from head to toe with bronze-grade equipment and had learnt many new skills. He was just itching to go, now that he had found new opponents to test them out on. What were you gonna do? This brother is going to vent some frustrations on your behalf, Nia Yen confidently replied. How many people do you have with you? Tang Yao asked, bewildered. He couldn't help but wonder if Nia Yen actually managed to bring a lot of people with him. None, just me. Is this some kind of joke? Tang Yao felt this was simply too ridiculous. Haha. What do you think? Nia Yen replied. At present, most players in the game weren't that strong. After all, they've only been playing the game for about a week. To put it simply, they were all still novices. Even guilds like Radiant Sacred Flame would be hard-pressed to find even a single member that could rival Nia Yen, let alone having the bottom-ranking runts facing him. I can't wipe them all out, but taking care of a few of them shouldn't be a problem. Nia Yen had 10 years of experience playing a thief. He knew all the skills used by each and every profession for PvP. Not to mention he understood combat strategies like the back of his hand. Even if they have more people, so what? Don't go getting yourself killed, though. If the situation starts looking dangerous and you can't help me, then so be it. Even if I die, I'll only lose 1 level. It's nothing to lose your head over. No worries. Find a place to hide and don't come out. Just sit back and watch. The entrance to Levin Hills was a small ravine that allowed only 3 to 4 people to pass through at a time. Steep vertical cliff faces flanked the ravine on both sides. There were 3 players guarding this entrance, a level 3 berserker, a level 3 elementalist, and a level 2 priest. Among the 3, only the elementalist had their name marked red. Their companions had already gone into chase after Tang Yao, leaving only these 3 to guard the entrance. And the hapless Tang Yao was trapped inside, just like a turtle in a jar. Damn! That bastard is as slippery as a loach. Even after all this, we still haven't managed to catch him. What's worse is that I don't even know when this red mark on my name is going to disappear. I can't even enter any towns or cities until it goes away, the elementalist cursed while chatting with his teammates. Captain Dian Song, Blue Drop, don't be angry. There's no problem as long as you don't get killed by someone before your red name disappears. Besides, we gained a lot of profit from this. Each of those 5 people we killed dropped a piece of equipment, the berserker consoled. Peh! Those 5 pieces of garbage aren't worth ass. If it weren't for those brats thinking they could actually steal our equipment, putting me in a shitty mood, then this old man wouldn't even have bothered with them, the elementalist named Dian Song replied disdainfully. Captain Dian Song, you're truly like an invincible god. You managed to single-handedly take out 3 of them by yourself. Remember when you cast Scorching Flame Explosion earlier? The way you used it was simply too exquisite. The priest next to him began flattering and fawning. Humph. Those 3 were just weak. It only took one scorching flame explosion to take out over half of their health. If it weren't for their small amount of magic resistance, they surely wouldn't have survived, Diansong said, somewhat pleased with himself. The nearby berserker and priest were simply followers of this ill-tempered elementalist. It seemed that his position within the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild was rather high. The three chatted on idly like this. Ah, a red name. Looks like today's meal will be rather decent. Nia Yen cackled with a strange laugh while hiding far off in the distance. If a player with their name marked in bright red like this elementalist were to be killed, then not a single piece of equipment on their body would remain. Everything equipped would drop. Furthermore, the equipment this elementalist donned didn't look half bad. He wore a blazing red mage gown that resembled flowing flames. He held in his hands a dark crimson redwood mage staff with a fiery blaze that circulated at the top. It appeared to be a part of the fire chaser set, but Nia Yen himself wasn't too sure. This elementalist was going down a route that focused on fire damage. The high damage from his fire spells was going to be a slight pain to deal with. The nearby berserker also looked like he would be hard to handle. As for the priest by their side, he could simply be ignored. Most priests still haven't even learned heal this early in the game. Therefore, they would just follow the team from behind and leech experience. Diansong swept his eyes over the surroundings. The steep inclines of the nearby mountains made the background slightly difficult to blend into. However, Nia Yen had learned the enhanced stealth passive skill, so it wouldn't be much of a problem. He entered stealth and slowly moved towards those three players. He grasped the dagger in his right hand, holding it in a reverse grip, and slowly crept closer. At about 5 meters away, he was able to clearly make out the expressions on each of their faces. The elementalist Diansong felt something peculiar and glanced over the nearby area. Seeing this, Nia Yen quickly halted his steps and exercised control over his breathing. Seems this elementalist has a rather high awareness. Captain Diansong, what's wrong? The berserker asked with a bewildered expression. He looked around, but all he saw was empty space. Diansong searched the surroundings once more with a more focused gaze, but still didn't discover anything. He shook his head and said, nothing, probably just my imagination. Nia Yen faintly knitted his brows. He could tell this Diansong was experienced in piking, because he was able to vaguely sense Nia Yen's presence from such a far distance. The more points a player had in awareness, the easier it would be for them to detect hidden enemies such as thieves. I can't take my opponents too lightly. Nia Yen inwardly reminded himself. Numerous bitter experiences in the past reminded him that underestimating an opponent would often lead to defeat. Nia Yen lightly tread forward, occasionally altering his walking speed. After calming his mind, he gradually entered a thief's stealthing state, and completely merged with the background. Captain Diansong, who knows where that arcane mage could be hiding up in the hills? Maybe by Mao, White Hair, and the others have already lost him, the berserker said after taking a quick glance at Diansong's expression. Oh, Diansong absent-mindedly replied. That brat is pretty cunning. He nearly killed Dong Zi, East Child, just now, the priest informed after looking at the party chat. Aha, his defense is too weak, Diansong answered back. He seemed preoccupied with something else. The berserker and priest were quite puzzled. What's going on with the captain? Why is he so absent-minded? By this time, Nia Yen had made his way behind Diansong, and was unable to see the expression on the latter's face. He was now only 2 meters away from Diansong. Nia Yen attentively gazed at his target's back. After making some quick measurements, he found that he was about 3 meters away from the other two. It's about time. He resembled a cheetah as he patiently stored up power in his legs before suddenly pouncing towards his target, Diansong. Brat! I was waiting for you to show yourself. Diansong laughed sinisterly. He retreated back and brandished the staff in his hand. Fierce flame ring. He had discovered Nia Yen long ago. His 8 points of awareness weren't something to be trifled with. Even if they were stealthed, it would still be incredibly difficult for a thief to leave behind no traces in front of an expert. The elementalist had intended to lure Nia Yen closer so he could kill him with the help of the nearby berserker and priest. You took a fancy to this old man's equipment? Do you think you'll still have a life to snatch it with? Diansong smiled disdainfully. He thought Nia Yen was no more than a passing thief who was lusting after his equipment. One who was urged on after seeing his red name and the type of gear he was wearing. From the start, he never thought Nia Yen and Tang Yao were connected. Diansong finished casting his spell. Immediately, a blazing ring of fire emerged out of thin air, expanding outwards in every direction as it headed towards Nia Yan. After casting Fierce Flame Ring, the elementalist immediately retreated backwards. Nia Yan was assaulted by the sensation of scorching flames. Nia Yan was inwardly surprised. This guy's reaction speed is pretty quick. Thief. The nearby berserker and priest finally reacted to the situation and immediately began taking action. At present, it was much too dangerous for Nia Yan to turn his back on them and try to make an escape. If the berserker were to start off with charge, and then the elementalist and priest were to follow up with their attacks, he would undoubtedly die. Kill him. Dian Song forced Nia Yan to halt his steps by casting Fierce Flame Ring. The berserker seized this opportunity and went to cut off his escape. Meanwhile, Dian Song started putting more distance between himself and Nia Yan so that he could calmly cast spells from the back. How could Nia Yan not understand his intentions? He knew that retreating at this moment was the same as asking Dian Song to barrage him with spells. With a flick of a finger, a scroll appeared in his hand. Although he was a little regretful, he still used it without the slightest bit of hesitation. System, your movement speed has been increased by 20% for 30 seconds. Nia Yan's base movement speed was already quite high. However, with the 20% increase, it had reached an astonishing level. He welcomed the oncoming blaze head-on and rushed forward. Boom! An explosion rang out as the Fierce Flame Ring struck Nia Yan. -35. System, the opposing party led by player Dian Song, Blue Drop, has taken the initiative to attack you. You are free to retaliate in legitimate self-defense. Time, 30 minutes. The retaliation period increased to 30 minutes when facing a small party. It would increase even further in team battles or guild wars. The magic damage from Dian Song's Fierce Flame Ring was quite high. If Nia Yan hadn't changed his old gear to his current bronze-grade equipment, this Fierce Flame Ring would have surely taken out at least the greater half of his health. Sparks scattered in every direction as Nia Yan rushed through the Fierce Flame Ring, rapidly drawing closer to Dian Song. He stabbed out with his dagger, aiming directly at his opponent's chest. Dian Song had originally hoped that his Fierce Flame Ring would force Nia Yan to withdraw. He never thought that Nia Yan would be so unwavering in his offense, pushing ahead instead of retreating. His speed was even faster than it was just moment prior. Moreover, he hadn't expected that his spell would do so little damage to Nia Yan. He honestly thought that it would deal around 50 damage at the very least. He hastily retreated backwards while casting Small Fireball. Assassinate. Splash. Blood gushed out and splattered everywhere. Nia Yan had met the spell head-on as his dagger penetrated Dian Song's chest. Finally, within melee range, his dagger flashed with a chilling light. This wasn't the first time Dian Song had faced a thief in combat, but it was definitely the first time he had felt such enormous pressure. Nia Yan's damage was quite high and his movements were extremely quick. He used a scroll. Dian Song hurriedly drew back and pulled out a talisman for his next spell. As he put some distance between himself and his opponent, he prepared to cast Scorching Flame Explosion. Scorching Flame Explosion required 5 syllables, 2 gestures, and a magic catalyst to cast. The spell wouldn't cast if even one of these components were missing. Fortunately, the talismans could be bought in stores and weren't expensive at all. The berserker came around from the side, then leapt into the air and cleaved down towards Nia Yan with Flame Slash. He was covering for Dian Song so that the latter could cast their spell. The two had fairly good teamwork. The berserker had managed to block Nia Yan at a crucial time. Red-colored fire elements began rapidly coalescing. In Dian Song's arsenal of spells, Scorching Flame Explosion had the highest amount of damage. If the opponent's magic resistance was low, it was even possible for them to be instantly killed on the spot. The magic resistance of thieves could only be considered average. Their base magic resistance was equal to 60% of their defense. The casting time for Scorching Flame Explosion was 5 seconds. Seeing the berserker leap at him from the side, Nia Yan waited until the edge of the oncoming blade was in front of his eyes. In that moment, Nia Yan swiftly and elegantly raised his dagger, parrying the blow. The 3-inch dagger and berserker's greatsword clashed against each other. A sharp metallic sound rang out, jolting both players at the same time. The berserker's greatsword struggled to advance by even half an inch. Dian Song continued retreating backwards while chanting out cryptic-sounding syllables one after another. His voice radiated out with a muffled yet explosive power. This voice was beckoning the elements to his call. Bang! A ray of holy light had struck Nia Yan, dealing 13 damage. Although this priest's damage output was limited, he still continued to attack Nie Yan regardless. Nie Yan quickly went in pursuit of Jian Song once more after he had parried the berserker's attack. The elementalist's heart shook in awe after witnessing this thief who was still advancing forward, even after facing an onslaught of fierce attacks. What a valiant thief! Nie Yan clearly understood that he had no time to think because he would lose his life if he hesitated in the slightest. In order to preserve his life, he could only put it at stake. He bravely faced the enemy head-on so that he could achieve victory. Countless years of PvP experience from his past life gave Nie Yan extremely sharp instincts. He wouldn't lose. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, blazing flames were rapidly coalescing into a huge mass atop Jian Song's staff. Soon the flames had rotated into a chaotic mass of deadly scorching fire essence. Nie Yan dashed forward at full speed and arrived in front of Jian Song. Concussive strike. In the end, Jian Song was just a step slower. Nie Yan bashed his dagger into the elementalist's skull. The scorching flame explosion rapidly collapsed before completely dissipating into thin air. Concussive strike had the effect of interrupting attacks. Therefore Nie Yan attacking Jian Song with concussive strike in the middle of casting caused Jian Song's spell to be cancelled. Nie Yan felt the tight heartstrings in his chest loosen by a bit. I barely made it. If I had let him successfully cast scorching flame explosion, I just can't imagine what sort of consequences there would have been. The berserker's flame slash had been parried, and in the blink of an eye, Nie Yan had already gotten out of his attack range. Furthermore, he had also managed to interrupt and stun Jian Song. Too fast. The berserker felt a chill in his heart. Nie Yan's speed was much faster than any other thief he had seen before. However, he didn't have the time to continue staring out blankly. He brandished his sword and activated charge. The berserker resembled a tank as he came crashing forward in Nie Yan's direction. Vital strike. Nie Yan completely ignored the incoming berserker. He took advantage of Jian Song's dazed state to activate Vital Strike and pierce his dagger into Jian Song's heart. System, Vital Strike successful. Attack plus 5%, causing additional damage. The 60 or so health Jian Song had remaining immediately started to plummet, then completely disappeared. Thud. Everything he was wearing, from his upper body to his lower body, dropped. From his headgear to his mage robes, gloves, pants, and boots, not a single piece of equipment remained. Every single piece of equipment had dropped and fallen on the ground. System, you have killed a red name player, and receive fame +1. In the game, it was possible to receive a little fame for killing a player who had their name marked in red. However, you wouldn't receive any more fame after killing the same red-named player more than 3 times. Killing red-named players wasn't the only way to earn fame, though. Players would also receive it for completing missions. The higher a player's fame, the easier it would be to receive certain missions. Fame would also allow players to receive more preferential treatment in towns and cities. By the time Nie Yan had killed Jian Song, the charging berserker had finally arrived and came slashing down with his sword. Nie Yan dodged by sidestepping, and their shoulders brushed as the charging berserker missed his target. Nie Yan was right before his eyes. The berserker had been absolutely certain his attack would hit Nie Yan. He never expected that Nie Yan would actually dodge all of a sudden, leaving him to continue charging far off into the distance. All of the captain's equipment dropped. Quickly, pick it up, the berserker anxiously shouted. Jian Song was an important figure within the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild and someone who frequently participated in guild dungeon runs. Every piece of equipment on his body was extremely valuable and rare. Even if you compared it to the entire guild, it would still be considered more valuable. If one were to estimate their value, they would be worth more than 10 silvers. However, the dropped equipment was just too far away from him. When he looked back, he found that Nie Yan was already beginning to pick the equipment up. The priest quickly ran over to where Jian Song dropped his equipment after dying. Just prior, he had run off into the distance, casting spells from the back in order to evade Nie Yan. How could he possibly make it back in time to grab some of the equipment? Just as Nie Yan had bent over and stuffed 2 pieces of equipment in his bag, a ray of holy light struck his body. -17. A damage value floated above Nie Yan's head. Linear slash. The berserker came leaping forward with his sword, slashing towards Nie Yan. Nie Yan ignored the oncoming berserker's slash and continued stuffing one piece of equipment after another into his bag. Ah, that's everything. Picking up equipment sure does make a person happy. By the time he lifted his head back up, the berserker had already arrived in front of him. Bang! The berserker's sword aura struck Nia Yan's body, causing him to lose 22 health. Nia Yan only had 23 health remaining, yet he still maintained a cool head. He rapidly fell back and drank a basic health potion. Brat! Let's see if I can't hack you to death. Dian had been killed. If he didn't kill Nia Yan, then he would have a hard time facing Dian. As a result, he frantically pursued Nia Yan with bloodshot eyes. That would require you to have at least some skill. Nia Yan laughed in contempt as he turned around and dashed away. He managed to pull himself away from the berserker almost instantaneously. The thief was already an inherently nimble profession. Yet now, with the dexterity bonus from his bronze-grade equipment and the movement speed bonus from the scroll, Nia Yan vastly outstripped the berserker in terms of speed. Nia Yan had already retreated 5 yards back. Don't let him run away, or else we won't be able to explain ourselves to the captain, the berserker shouted anxiously. He was too slow. There was absolutely no way he'd be able to catch up. As he took a quick glance at charge on his skill bar, he lamented the fact that it was still on cooldown. I know. The priest attacked once more. A beam of holy light struck Nia Yan, dealing 16 damage. The berserker relentlessly pursued from behind. However, from the start, Nia Yan never intended to escape. He was simply stalling for time so that a few skills could come off cooldown. Just as the priest finished casting, Nia Yan pulled back and began applying bandages to himself. +20, +20, +20, +20. Gradually, his health began restoring every second. On the 4th tick, the priest struck Nia Yan with another beam of holy light, interrupting the healing. Though by this time, Nia Yan had already been restored to full health. At present, with the average level of the player base, intermediate combat medic was an existence that defied the heavens. He has a medic skill, the berserker exclaimed in surprise. A hint of fear could be heard in his tone. What kind of medic skill is this? The medic skills he had seen in the past could only be used when combat ended. Nonetheless, they would still only restore 5 health every second. Yet, Nia Yan's skill restored 20. He had never even encountered a medic skill like Nia Yan's that could be used in the middle of combat, let alone one that had such outrageous healing effects too. It was a painstaking effort trying to get Nia Yan down to low health. His death was right before their eyes. Then all of a sudden, the situation completely reversed. By now all of Nia Yan's skills had come off cooldown. The corner of his lips faintly curved into a smile. Now it's your turn. He turned around and dashed in the direction of the berserker. The berserker's complexion turned deathly white as he watched Nia Yan pounce towards him. Hurriedly, he raised his sword in an attempt to resist. Nia Yan at full health could kill their captain even while being attacked on 3 sides. Now that Dian was dead, how could just the 2 of them possibly be a match for Nia Yan? The dagger in Nia Yan's hand sliced in a wide arc, then suddenly changed direction mid-slash. Concussive strike, thwack! The berserker's greatsword crashed into Nia Yan's chest. At the same time, the pommel of Nia Yan's dagger hit the berserker directly on the forehead. The berserker sunk into a dazed state. Assassinate! Nia Yan plunged the dagger into the berserker's chest. He then followed up with Vital Strike, sending the dagger even deeper into his target. Instantly, the berserker lost the greater portion of his health. Seeing the berserker about to come back to his sense, Nia Yan circled behind him and used Smothering Strike, putting him in a dazed state once more. Due to performing a series of attacks and having been in combat so long, Nia Yan was running somewhat low on stamina. Taking a deep breath, he plunged his dagger into the berserker's back. Through the sequence of explosive attacks, the berserker's health had gone from over 180 to a mere 60 within just a few short seconds. If this continues, I'm dead for sure. The berserker was distraught with fear as he emerged from his dazed state. He frantically fled in the other direction in an attempt to preserve his life. If the berserker had turned around and attacked Nia Yan, he might have still been able to cause some damage. However, he chose not to because he was self-centered and cowardly. Instead, he panicked as soon as he saw his health was low, desperately running for his life just because he was afraid of losing a piece of equipment upon death. You think you can escape? Nia Yan pursued, effortlessly arriving behind the berserker's back. He raised his dagger, then successively slashed his opponent several times in the back. -23. -21. -16. Arg. Damn it. The berserker cursed as his health fell to 0 and his vision faded to black. His body collapsed and landed flat on the ground. Just a moment later, a piece of equipment dropped from his corpse. "Heh! It's finally your turn." Nia Yan dashed towards the priest after picking up the berserker's dropped equipment. He had taken quite a sore beating from this priest. From the time he was fighting Dian Song up until the berserker just now, this priest was constantly firing off attacks at him like a buzzing fly. Seeing the berserker collapsed on the ground, the priest stared out foolishly. How did he suddenly become the only one remaining in the blink of an eye? He was just a low-level priest who hadn't even learned any healing skills. How could he possibly be a match for this thief? The priest turned his back and broke into a mad sprint. At that moment, he had completely thrown away any thoughts of trying to fight Nia Yan. No matter what course of action he took, he would still end up dead. Therefore his first instinctual reaction was to flee for his life. Nia Yan was already in pursuit. Mage professions like this priest were inherently rather slow, so where could a priest like him possibly escape to? As Nia Yan slashed in quick succession, his dagger easily tore through the priest's cloth armor. -31. -32. -32. Several damage values floated above the priest's head. Before he had even made a few steps, his body fell forward and collapsed on the ground. Nia Yan walked up to the priest's corpse and picked up the piece of equipment that dropped. The equipment the priest and berserker dropped were rather ordinary, 2 pieces of level 0 equipment that were both white grade. The best pieces of gear were still the ones that were dropped by the elementalist: headgear, gloves, mage robes, staff, pants, and boots. 6 pieces of equipment in total, and not one less. Fire Chaser Crown, Fire Damage +5. Fire Chaser Gloves, Balance +3. Fire Chaser Robes, Fire Damage +10. Fire Chaser Pants, Willpower +2. Fire Chaser Boots, Movement Speed +2. It's the Fire Chaser set. No wonder that Elementalist's damage was so high. The equipment for this set came from the level 3 instance, Black Flame Forest. Before level 5 instances were released, this set was regarded as the best possible equipment for mages that focused on fire magic. Of course, because it was good, the set pieces had a rather low drop rate. It would take at least 4 or 5 runs through the Black Flame Forest to collect all the pieces required to complete the entire set. Besides the Fire Chaser set, there was also a silver grade level 0 tempered blue staff. It had the additional properties of magic +3 and elemental damage +5. Nia Yan reckoned that Jiansong's intestines were now green with regret. Even if Jiansong continued killing Tang Yao and his party members until they dropped back to level 0, it still wouldn't be worth losing every single piece of equipment on his body. Not bad, he even had a silver grade staff, Nia Yan thought to himself. If he were to put this staff up for auction, it would at the very least sell for 3 silvers. This bronze-grade Fire Chaser set can be equipped by both elementalists and arcane mages because both of these professions have fire magic. Elementalists are able to control the fire elements, whereas arcane mages are able to control arcane fire. Nia Yan could gift Tang Yao this Fire Chaser set as a present. As for the silver-grade staff, Tang Yao wasn't able to use it. As such, Nia Yan thought about selling it and using the money for other expenses. If not, he could always exchange it for 1 or 2 pieces of equipment instead. Where are you right now? Tell me your coordinates. 231.395.285. There's a cave in that area where level 5 monsters spawn inside. I'm in that cave right now, hiding in a corner and afraid to come out. I killed 3 members from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild. One of them was called Jiansong or something. You killed Jiansong? You're not lying to me, are you? That bastard was too damned overpowered. He took out 3 of my party members all by himself. With his magic damage, a single fireball was able to take out half our health. To Tang Yao, Nia Yan killing Jiansong was an amazing and unimaginable outcome. The guy's name was marked in bright red. He dropped every single piece of equipment from his body when he died. Here, this is his equipment. It's the Fire Chaser set. I'll give it to you as a gift. Brother, I was lucky to have you watch out for me in my past life. I burdened you with much too many things. Before I even got to repay you back, I ended up reincarnating. Brother, in this life, I'll be the one to watch out for you instead. Nia Yan inwardly thought as he shared the Fire Chaser set with Tang Yao. Tang Yao's mouth was agape. His face was filled with surprise as he stared at the equipment Nia Yan shared with him. This isn't real, right? Tang Yao slapped himself in the face to confirm he was seeing things clearly. This set, are you sure you want to gift this to me? Tang Yao naturally knew what this fire chaser set signified. It was only possible to get this set after running the Black Flame Forest 4 or 5 times. Not to mention that teams would often get wiped while running it as well. If he were to wear this set and enter an instance with another party, then it could be said that from the value of this set alone, it was certain that those members would rush to recruit him into their team. Do you think I'm making fun of you or something? Nie Yan scolded Tang Yao and laughed. Even if I die today, it'll still be worth it. Although I'm only 18 years old this year and still haven't experienced many serious matters in life, what I'm most proud of is that I managed to find a brother like you. Tang Yao emotionally exclaimed. He naturally understood Nie Yan's financial situation. This fire chaser set, if Nie Yan were to put it up at a transaction platform for real money, the price he'd fetch would be quite considerable. Yet Nie Yan was actually preparing to send him this set as a gift. This proved that Nie Yan truly regarded him as a brother. Nie Yan thought back to the past. What he had wanted to say the most to Tang Yao in his past life were those words as well. When it comes to brothers like us, there's no need to be polite. Wait up, I'm going to kill a few more of them, Nie Yan informed. He still had 25 minutes remaining where he was allowed to retaliate in self-defense. I never thought that a guy like you would be so gifted at playing this game. When I listened to your advice earlier in the day, everything suddenly became clear to me, and my skill significantly improved. Otherwise, I would have never been able to hold on up until now, Tang Yao informed. He admired Nie Yan from the bottom of his heart. After seeing his performance today, he couldn't help but view Nie Yan in a whole new light. His equipment would vastly improve with this fire chaser set, and he would enter the ranks of experts. In the past, Tang Yao had regarded Nie Yan as a poor and pitiful brother. One whom he would have watched out for in everything. But now, Nie Yan's actions had caused him to look up to and admire Nie Yan. For the first time, he felt this brother of his was quite truly a capable person. Arcane mages only have so many skills. So all you need to do is put on that fire chaser set, practice your skills for a bit, and you'll find yourself improving in no time. There are over 20 people. How do you plan on dealing with all of them? Tang Yao asked. No matter how strong Nie Yan was, he was still just a single person. This is the difference between thieves and other professions. Thieves don't necessarily have to attack head-on. The expertise of a thief lay in their ability to set ambushes. Tang Yao somewhat understood when he heard these words. Nie Yan was preparing to mount a sneak attack, catch them off guard and take them out one by one. However, this wasn't going to be easy to pull off. If he wasn't careful and ended up getting caught, then he would most likely end up dead. Tang Yao couldn't help but think that perhaps Nie Yan was being a bit too confident. Small hilltops stretched out as far as the eye could see. They were covered in dense thickets of trees and strangely shaped boulders that towered over the landscape. Small streams flowed at the base of each hillside, where dense amounts of stone and rubble could be seen littering the nearby area. The terrain of this place was quite complicated. It was no wonder that Tang Yao could hide in this area for so long without anyone discovering him. Off in the distance, a few indistinct figures could be seen at the top of one of these hillsides. Nie Yan sprinted off in that direction. Tang Yao was hiding within a cave on that exact hilltop. This group of scoundrels was rather unrelenting. They seemed to be fine wasting their time trying to completely exterminate Tang Yao's party, simply because a minor conflict had arisen between the two of them. They were truly too vicious, and the only reason they dared to act in such a way was because they noticed that Tang Yao's group didn't have a guild backing them up. Therefore, even if Tang Yao and his friends were killed off, they would have no one to bring up their grievances to. Today the Radiant Sacred Flame members were killing Tang Yao's group in order to make them drop a level. They did this with the intent of impeding their progress. This was to prevent Tang Yao and his party from becoming more troublesome when they leveled up in the future. Nie Yan traveled through the dense thickets. He was only around 100 meters away from the cave that Tang Yao was hiding in. I'm not too far away from you. For now, it's best you don't come out, so just keep hiding. Be careful, they aren't weak. Tang Yao knew what Nie Yan wanted to do, and couldn't help but worry a little. No worries. With their levels, I'll be able to easily toy with them to death. Nie Yan's bag was full of potions, his gear was bronze grade, and he had learned many new skills. Furthermore, he possessed the immensely overpowered intermediate combat medic skill. Killing one or two of them wouldn't be a problem for him at all. Tang Yao felt that Nie Yan had changed a great deal. In fact, he had changed so much that Tang Yao didn't even recognize him anymore. The cowardly Nie Yan of the past wouldn't dare to say such words. Nie Yen had become a lot more confident compared to his past self. Not only that, but he also gave off the feeling that you could firmly place your trust in him. While Nie Yen and Tang Yao were talking, a slight rustling noise could be heard off in the distance. They re-hear. Nie Yan's eyebrows raised as he took cover behind a tree. A party of 5 was moving through the nearby thickets. Nie Yen observed the composition of their party: an elementalist, a holy mage, a berserker, a fighter, and a paladin. The frontliners took the lead while the 2 casters followed from behind. This was a rather standard formation. Their equipment didn't look like anything special either. Within the current player base, those who could wear bronze-grade or silver-grade equipment were few in number. The dense thickets were full of branches that grew without restraint and got in the way. These branches made it very difficult for the group of 5 to move forward, as they had no choice but to duck their heads and travel through small gaps between the trees. The berserker even had to use his sword to chop down the occasional thick branch that would obstruct their path. Captain Dian Song was killed, the fighter said as he looked at the team chat. How's that possible? With the captain's strength, there are very few people capable of beating him, the paladin replied in a surprised tone. Dian Song's strength was publicly recognized amongst all of them. With the fire chaser set, his damage was at least within the top 10 in the entire guild. Not to mention his skill in combat wasn't bad either. The captain's name was still marked red, which means that all that equipment on his body. The elementalist raised his head to look at everyone and discovered the gloomy expressions on each of their faces. None of them dared to ask what happened next. Everything dropped, the fighter gloomily exclaimed. They truly were unlucky today. Who did it? They must have had a lot of people, right? The elementalist questioned. In his mind, there should have been no other way. Whoever killed Dian Song must have brought many people in order to do so. Which team was it, or was it perhaps the work of a guild? We'll exterminate them. The enemy was only a single thief, the fighter replied. When he had heard the news himself, he too felt that it was inconceivable. Wait, weren't there 2 other people with the captain? Indeed. However, that one thief managed to kill all 3 of them. What? How is that possible? What level was the thief? Level 3. A single level 3 thief managed to kill Dian Song and his party. This was simply too crazy. Everyone felt that such a thing was simply outrageous. Are you sure you aren't mistaken? This piece of information came straight from the mouth of the captain himself. The information couldn't be false. After all, a single level 3 had wiped out his entire party. For Dian Song, this definitely wasn't something he was proud of. If the information wasn't true, then he wouldn't be proclaiming it everywhere. What was that thief's name? The elementalist asked. Currently, the level difference among the player base wasn't high. Being able to fight 1 versus 2 was already a huge accomplishment, but being able to win 1 versus 3, this person must have had some kind of god-level combat ability. He's called Nie Yen, Nirvana Flame, and the guilds put out a hit order on him. The reward for killing him once is 5 silvers. In the future, if anyone encounters this player, they are to remain vigilant. Captain Dian Song said that person has a lot of skills. Unless your party is over 3 members, it's best not to seek him out with the intent of provoking him, the fighter announced. Although the reward for killing Nie Yen was luxurious, they were still required to put their lives on the line to do it. Dian Song was unable to defeat him, let alone them. 5 silvers is a lot of money, the elementalist and the others exclaimed in amazement. 5 silvers was more than enough for them to buy several pieces of bronze-grade equipment. While these people were deep in discussion, Nie Yen had stealthily made his way over to them. A kill order from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild? Interesting. I'd like to see how you intend to do that. Nie Yen smiled disdainfully as he approached from behind and confirmed the positions of the 5 people. The closest one to him was the Holy Mage at about 3 meters away. The next was the Elementalist at about 5 meters. The furthest away were the Berserker, Fighter, and Paladin, who were clearing the way ahead. Occasionally, 1 or 2 level 3 deer would appear in this area. However, they would be swiftly killed by these 5 people. 3 powerful members who could fight in close combat, along with 2 mages who had high magic damage, made killing monsters especially quick. Nie Yen was waiting for the right opportunity as he leisurely followed them from behind. The Holy Mage seemed to have sensed something and turned his head back to look around. Nie Yen hurriedly hid behind a nearby tree. He hadn't activated stealth yet, instead, he was relying entirely on his own awareness. As he ducked away from this Holy Mage's line of sight, the shade from the tree concealed his body. The thief's innate concealing abilities would automatically reveal its effects. Everything was serene. The holy mage didn't discover anything strange. Could it have just been my imagination? There are monsters ahead. Hurry up and catch up with us. The elementalist turned his head and said to the holy mage who was lagging behind. Oh, all right, the holy mage replied, and quickened his pace to catch up. Hearing the conversation between those two people, Niayan's heartbeat jumped. His opportunity had arrived. He entered stealth and slightly accelerated his pace. There's a leader-class deer. Everyone be careful, the fighter yelled out as he raised his round wooden shield and slowly proceeded forward. We're not searching for that arcane mage anymore? We have no idea where that brat ran off to. In any case, the situation has turned out like this. Let's kill this deer chief first, then we'll discuss it afterward. As it was 5 of them versus a single deer chief, they expected an easy fight. A huge deer emerged from the thickets ahead. It had a build similar to that of a bison, and its entire body was covered in white spots. Immense antlers that resembled overgrown coral sprouted from its head. The deer lowered its head, its antlers reaching down past its knees, and prepared to charge. The moment the deer chief moved, the muscles in its forelimbs incessantly trembled, brimming with an explosive power. The moment it saw the fighter approaching, it lowered its antlers and issued a warning cry, then slowly began moving forward. Deer chief, level 3. Leader class monster. Health, 200/200. Are you guys ready? The fighter nervously shouted back to his allies. His wooden round shield and the deer's antlers were only a few meters apart, yet he was still able to feel the powerful and imposing pressure that emanated from this deer chief's robust body. Ready. We have to kill this deer chief before Fei Jia, Xiaku, and the others arrive, the fighter instructed. If the 5 of them killed this deer chief now, then the loot would be distributed evenly amongst the 5 of them. However, if the others were to arrive, then they wouldn't receive much after distributing it evenly. The berserker and paladin were flanking from both sides, while the holy mage and elementalist took their positions away from the front. The fighter shouted with a booming voice, then rushed forward and cleaved down with the sword in his right hand. Slash. The sword left a large wound after it struck the deer chief's body. The deer chief took one step forward and swept its sharp antlers at the fighter. The fighter pulled back a bit and raised his shield to defend against the incoming blow. Bang. A heavy sound reverberated as a pair of antlers collided with a round wooden shield. The berserker and paladin took this opportunity to flank the deer chief on both sides in a pincer attack. Guys, pay attention to your aggro, the fighter urged with a worried tone. Due to their ability to wield a shield, fighters had a much higher defense when compared to other professions. Because of this, the deer chief was only able to deal 10 or so damage to the fighter when it attacked. However, if the deer chief were to switch aggro onto the berserker or paladin, they would at most be able to survive 5 attacks. Monsters would initially focus their aggro on whoever attacked them first. However, in the event that there was someone who dealt too much damage to a monster, or a player's level or power was exceedingly low, the monster's aggro would switch onto them. We know. You can relax, replied the berserker and paladin. The holy mage and elementalist at the back began casting spells and dealing damage. Their coordination would be considered about average. It seemed that killing the deer chief within the next few moments wouldn't be a problem for them. Only, they weren't aware of the danger that was quietly approaching from behind. Niayan stealthily made his way behind the holy mage and elementalist. Only a few steps more and he would close the distance between them. The 2 mages were standing quite close to each other, and their attention was focused entirely on the deer chief. It appeared that the deer chief would be dead within the next 30 seconds. The party members were filled with an endless amount of excitement when they thought about all the loot they would receive. Before Niayan's eyes, the heads of the holy mage and elementalist were completely exposed. Niayan's pacing slowed as he drew closer, as he needed to be more cautious when he neared his target. Otherwise, there was a possibility that the prey within his grasp would slip away. Patience was another major quality that defined a thief's competence. After all, the outcome of their battles often depended on whether their first strike was a success or not. Of course, there was also an endless amount of sneaking and preparation which led up to that first strike. If a thief lacked patience, it would be very easy for others to find flaws and catch them. The battle between this group of players and the deer chief was about to reach its climax. The deer chief had been unceasingly ramming its antlers against the fighter, causing the latter's health to rapidly fall. When his health fell to around 20, the fighter took out a basic health potion and drank it. Keep it up, everyone. The deer chief only has half its health remaining, the fighter shouted as he raised his shield and slashed forward with his sword again. The berserker and paladin followed suit, increasing their attack speed. While in combat with the deer chief, their health had fallen to about half. The only ones who hadn't received any damage were the two mages in the back. Lazy, fall back a bit. Why are you so far forward? The fighter admonished to the berserker. I know. The berserker hurriedly pulled back. Evidently, out of the 5 people in this group, it appeared that this fighter had the most combat experience. When we're running a dungeon in the future, you guys absolutely cannot go too far forward. Otherwise, you're looking to get yourself killed. Realize your mistakes today, and tomorrow we'll run a small 5-man dungeon together. Once you guys get more familiarized with team-based combat, then we can start running larger dungeons with a full team, the fighter said. He then took a few steps back, luring the deer chief in between 2 large trees. What activities has the guild been doing lately? The berserker's eyes lit up as he asked. There have always been guild activities. The guild leader and some of the others have been running the Treant Forest and Dark Wetlands for a while now. You think you're good enough to accompany them? The fighter asked rhetorically. The people running the Treant Forest and Dark Wetlands were all elites in the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild. In terms of a player's defense, attack, health, etc., their guild had harsh requirements. So unless a player's equipment reached a certain level, or they had good skills, there was basically no chance that they would be allowed to run a dungeon with the elites. In other words, this group of 5 shouldn't even dream of going. There's no level 2 dungeons? You know, like the Moose Rat Cavern or Skeleton Cave, the berserker asked. These dungeons were also 20-person instances. They were easier and the equipment that could be looted wasn't bad either. Which was why running one of these dungeons would help them upgrade their equipment in preparation for the higher-ranked ones. The guild leader will be organizing something in a few days, so let's focus on raising our levels for now. Be careful and don't let your attention wane. But for now, let's get rid of this deer chief. Who knows? It might drop some decent equipment. The fighter took 2 more steps back. His retreat was firm and stable. The holy mage and elementalist copied him and retreated a few steps back as well. Nia Yen noticed the opposing fighter was rather decent. His ability to pull aggro was quite good. As soon as he noticed the deer chief was about to switch its aggro, he would strike it with his shield and attract its attention again. With its aggro constantly being attracted and pulled, the deer chief was unable to display its full fighting strength. Were it not for this fighter, this team wouldn't have stood a chance against this level 3 deer chief. Nia Yan's movements were extremely cautious in order to prevent being detected by the holy mage and elementalist. However, they unexpectedly started retreating back towards him. For fuck's sake. Nia Yan thought. The holy mage had already retreated back to where he was hiding. Nia Yan raised his dagger and struck down, aiming at the back of the holy mage's head. Smothering strike. His dagger hit the holy mage and put him under a dazed state. Someone's trying to steal our kill. The elementalist beside them noticed the commotion and turned his head, immediately discovering Nia Yan. Yet before even half of these words could come out of his mouth, Nia Yan dashed over and used the handle of his dagger to strike the elementalist in the forehead. Concussive strike. After successfully stunning his target, Nia Yan followed up with assassinate, lacerate, and finished it off with a vital strike aimed at his opponent's throat. Nia Yan's actions were quite fast. In just a short amount of time, he managed to inflict a massive amount of damage. -20, -22, -29, -36. 4 damage values floated above the elementalist's head. By the time the elementalist came out of his dazed state, he was left with only 18 health remaining. The mage had gone into a state of panic. Nia Yan's damage was just too terrifying. -5, -5. 2 more damage values floated above the elementalist's head in succession. The elementalist hurriedly took out a basic health potion. Just as the bottle touched his lips, Nia Yan's dagger flashed into view and lightly slashed across his chest. -8 a damage value floated atop his head. The elementalist staggered back and reached out as if to grasp something, but his hand found only empty air. Soon after, he collapsed on the ground as his health bar fell to 0. That's 1 down, Nia Yan whispered to himself as he picked up the piece of equipment that the elementalist dropped. By this time the holy mage had come out of his daze. But, unluckily for him, Nia Yan had already finished off the elementalist. The holy mage turned tail and attempted to escape, but how could Nia Yan possibly give him such an opportunity? Nia Yan brandished his dagger and gave chase to the fleeing mage. After catching up, he unleashed a barrage of attacks on the holy mage's back. -12, -13, -15. Without exception, every single one of his skills was on cooldown. Therefore Nia Yan could only use a normal attack. However, due to a thief's attack speed being innately fast, the damage dealt was still quite considerable. The holy mage wasn't about to go down without a fight, though. He turned around and hit Nia Yan with Holy Strike, then followed up with Holy Smite, dealing a total of 53 damage. During all this, the fighter, berserker, and paladin had continued fighting with the deer chief. They became aware of the situation after noticing that, all of a sudden, the constant damage from their mages in the rear had suddenly disappeared. Someone mounted a sneak attack. "It's that thief, Nia Yan, Nirvana Flame," the fighter anxiously shouted. Why did this scoundrel have to suddenly appear during such a crucial moment in their fight against the leader-class monster? In addition, Nia Yan still had over 20 minutes of retaliation time left. What are we gonna do? Little by little, the berserker slowly retreated. Their current circumstances were quite unfavorable. They were suffering from a pincer attack, with the deer chief attacking from the front and Nia Yan attacking from the rear. The three frontline had been constantly dealing with the deer chief, which was why each of them had a little under half their health remaining. If they were even a little careless, it was very likely that all 5 of them would die here today. In the blink of an eye, Nia Yan had taken out their elementalist. Their other mage was still alive, but he barely had any health left. The way things were looking, the situation was about to become even more worrisome. "First, kill the deer chief, we'll deal with the rest later," the fighter instructed. The deer chief's aggro was completely focused on them. If they ignored the deer chief and went after Nia Yan instead, it would definitely cause them trouble later on. The deer chief doesn't have much health left. "Cleave!" The fighter cleaved down with his sword. The berserker and paladin also quickened their pace as they unceasingly hacked at the deer chief. Flame slash! Radiant slash! The berserker and paladin each used their most powerful skills, with the intent of causing high amounts of damage. One after another, damage values drifted up from the deer chief's head. It was a race against time for both sides. The battle between Nia Yan and the holy mage was also nearing its climax. The two continued to battle as they ran, with one fleeing from the other. Nia Yan constantly maneuvered his way around the holy mage and repeatedly slashed at his exposed back. Wherever the dagger struck, blood would spurt out. The holy mage continuously unloaded magic spells as he attempted to break away from Nia Yan. Gradually, both their health bars fell. However, it was clear that the holy mage's health was falling faster. He hurriedly took out both a basic health potion and a basic recovery potion, then drank them. +3, +3. Before even a few seconds had passed, Nia Yan struck out and interrupted the healing from the basic recovery potion. -18, -15. "Run over here." The fighter was burning with anxiety as he yelled out. He was fighting the deer chief while also keeping a close eye on the battle between Nia Yan and the holy mage. It was clear to him that his teammate wasn't much of a match for this thief. The holy mage was down to only 36 health. "Damn that bastard. Isn't he targeting us on purpose?" the fighter cursed as he continuously slashed at the deer chief. After taking out Jian Song and his group, Nia Yan suddenly appeared here. This definitely wasn't a coincidence. "Don't tell me, this thief is friends with that arcane mage and his group?" "Nia Yan, I'll remember you. Our Radiant Sacred Flame Guild definitely won't let you off easily," the berserker furiously shouted. "I'm extremely honored. I'll gladly await you maggots at any time," Nia Yan replied with an indifferent expression. At this point in time, Radiant Sacred Flame was but a small guild. Even if you were to add up all their members, they still wouldn't surpass 1,000. They certainly didn't have the time or energy to search everywhere for Nia Yan and Tang Yao. Granted, even if they were able to find Tang Yao and Nia Yan, they still couldn't possibly dispatch the entire guild after them. Besides, if they were to send everyone over and he decided that he couldn't afford to take them on, then couldn't he just hide instead? In the past, Nia Yan had single-handedly caused the 5 guilds under the Chaosu financial group to scramble after him. Even their several 100,000 people were incapable of dealing with him, so why would Nia Yan fear a small fry like Radiant Sacred Flame Guild? Not to mention that the reincarnated Nia Yan was definitely much more difficult to deal with than the Nia Yan from the past. So what was there for him to be afraid of? Even if your backup arrives, they'll simply be sending side dishes, superscript 1 Nia Yen said with contempt. He stabbed his dagger into the holy mage's chest, finishing him off. Glancing at his own health bar, he saw that he still had a little over 50 remaining. This number was within his expectations. Nia Yen dashed over to where the warriors were. The deer chief's health had been whittled down to where it had only around 10% remaining. Nia Yen was preparing to snatch whatever equipment dropped from the deer chief. Kill, the fighter furiously yelled while using shield strike to push the deer chief back. Suddenly, the deer chief started to waver. Linear slash, the berserker tightly gripped his greatsword and slashed at the deer chief. -15. A damage value floated above the deer chief's head. It was a critical strike. The deer chief let out a miserable whine and then collapsed. The fighter quickly bent down, picked up the item that the deer chief dropped, and threw it into his bag. I was just a step too late. Nia Yen halted his movements upon seeing the fighter pick up the loot, and then began retreating back. The fighter only had a quarter of his health remaining, the berserker had about 40%, and the paladin had 35%. Although they had low health, facing these three close combat professions together certainly wasn't as simple as it seemed. Not to mention his dagger wouldn't do much damage against professions with thick armor such as the fighter. I can't deal with the three of them. I'll be better off not taking this risk, Nia Yen thought to himself. The fighter and the two others weren't willing to take such risks to block off Nia Yen either, as they didn't have much health remaining. Thus they just stood and waited as their health slowly recovered. Having only gained a single piece of bronze-grade equipment after losing two people in the fight against the deer chief, they certainly weren't looking at a profitable outcome. Two more were killed, the fighter whispered under his breath as he stared daggers at Nia Yen. If they were to calculate their losses now, a total of 5 members from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild had been killed by Nia Yen's hands today. Nia Yen wasn't very far from his enemies. Both sides stood still, simply staring at each other. Neither party dared to attack rashly. Although they all had low health, the three of them together could definitely take on Nia Yen. However, if they were separated, then who could say what the outcome might be? A single thief had frightened these three warriors to the point where they didn't dare to take action. This was simply a huge loss of face. Their expressions showed a hint of anger and humiliation. Nia Yen extended his right hand forward, raised a certain finger, and made an amusing yet disdainful gesture. The three of you aren't going to come? If you're not coming, I might as well leave then. Nia Yen glanced at the three and laughed mockingly. His eyes seemed to be focused on something deeper within the thickets. Movement and activity could be seen to the south, east, and west of his current position. He reckoned that the other Radiant Sacred Flame members were moving closer in an attempt to encircle him. Nia Yen didn't dare to be careless, and so hastily started retreating back. He moved like a hare as he dashed through the gaps between trees. Reinforcements have arrived. Block him and don't let him escape, the fighter ordered as he gave chase to Nia Yen. The berserker and paladin followed closely from behind. Why did it take you guys so long to get here? The fighter said gloomily in voice chat. We found out where that arcane mage was hiding and almost managed to catch him. If you guys hadn't gotten in trouble, that bastard would already be dead. What happened over on your side? Dao Zi and Huang and I were killed, the fighter replied. What happened? Weren't they together with you guys? It was the work of that thief called Nia Yen, Nirvana Flame, again. He mounted a sneak attack against us and killed Dao Zi and Huang and I, the fighter explained. He hid the fact that he and his party members had been fighting a deer chief at the time. Fuck, it's that damn thief again. They had never met such a powerful thief before. Moreover, this scoundrel had been specifically targeting them this whole time. I reckon he's friends with that group of people we killed earlier. He escaped north. Let's chase him. Several figures made their way through the gaps in the thicket. Nia Yen was quite fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already put a large distance between himself and his pursuers. Up ahead, several silhouettes emerged from the trees and flanked him on both sides. He couldn't go any further forward, and the fighter and the others were pursuing him from behind. No matter where he ran, he would definitely end up surrounded. Seeing no escape route, Nia Yen hid behind a tree and entered stealth. The fighter, berserker, and paladin, who were pursuing from behind, met up with the several figures who appeared up ahead. What happened? Where is he? Asked the fighter. He scanned the surroundings and found naught but trees and empty space. Where had Nia Yen disappeared to? Did he run off? I think he went into stealth. Let's stay here and search. The players spread out and began searching every nook and cranny in the surrounding area. Nia Yan maintained his breathing and made his way out while still under the effects of stealth. However, people from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild were everywhere, which meant that the crisis was still unabated. "Where are you? What's the situation?" Tang Yao asked through the voice call. "I killed another two," replied Nia Yan as he glanced at his knapsack. Although there were 2 new pieces of equipment inside, they weren't anything special. Even if he put it up for auction, it would only sell for a few coppers at most. "Awesome! Brat, I'm impressed," Tang Yao exclaimed in admiration. The Radiant Sacred Flame members usually operated in groups of 3 or 4. Tang Yao couldn't help but wonder how Nia Yan managed to accomplish such a feat. "Where are you right now?" asked Nia Yan. "I encountered a group of Radiant Sacred Flame members just a moment ago. I almost ended up being caught by them, so I fled deeper into the cave. In the end, they left the cave and went back outside. But now I can't get out. There are level 5 monsters everywhere and they've got me trapped," replied Tang Yao. He guessed the reason why those Radiant Sacred Flame members left was to deal with Nia Yan. This meant Nia Yan had indirectly saved his life. However, the problem was, he was currently in an even more dangerous predicament. The deeper parts of the cave were filled with level 5 rock spiders. If he was even a bit careless, he would most likely lose his life. "Just stay put. I'll give you a return scroll when I get there. Having a return scroll would make things a lot easier, but can you even get here? The passage is completely blocked by rock spiders now. We'll deal with that later. There's a bit of a problem over on my side, so I'm gonna hang up first. Superscript 1. So the side dishes part is a pun because the Chinese slang for noob is the same character as vegetable/side dish. Nia Yan is basically saying that, even if they send more people, they're all noobs and are going to be food, equipment dropped, for him. Nia Yan hung up the call. Gradually his body became more and more transparent until he completely blended in with the dense green thickets that surrounded him. He carefully observed the players who were constantly passing by. Several of these players ran straight past Nia Yan, yet not a single one noticed his presence. "I couldn't find him. Where the hell could he have gone? Forget about it. He's probably already escaped by now," the berserker named Lazy suggested. A slight fear still lingered in his mind, urging him to leave. After all, ever since Nia Yan had appeared they were always the ones being attacked, never the ones attacking. By now the number of dead on their side totaled 5 people, yet they weren't even able to touch a single hair on their opponent's body. He was an extremely dangerous individual, and it definitely wasn't worth the risk to continue chasing him down like this. What if they were unable to catch him and were killed instead? What about that arcane mage, Yao Zi? We chased him into the rock spider cavern. When that thief Nia Yan appeared we were called over to help catch him, so we couldn't chase that arcane mage any longer. But don't worry, I aggroed a bunch of rock spiders and lured them near the passage, so I reckon he won't be getting out anytime soon. Hang on, I think we should continue searching for that thief. His stealth should be coming to an end soon, and he's definitely still in this area, the fighter said, unwilling to give up the search. How could he just allow Nia Yan to escape? Nia Yan locked his gaze on the berserker who only had 45% health remaining. As the berserker had just been in combat, he didn't have the time to sit down and recover his health. In addition, the system still considered him to be in a state of combat, which meant that his natural health recovery would be slowed considerably. Though his nearby guildmates gave him a sense of relief, he still kept a tight grip on the basic health potion he was hiding in his left hand. Yet there was one other reason why nobody was restoring their health. The fighter wouldn't allow it. He was hoping that their low health would lure Nia Yan out into the open. Even though they couldn't see Nia Yan, his mere existence forced them to remain cautious. The berserker also had a silencing paladin at full health by his side. The two of them began walking in Nia Yan's direction. Steadily, they drew closer and closer to where Nia Yan was hiding, yet they still didn't discover him. It was starting to look like the two would walk right into him. If an enemy were to make contact with a thief under the effects of stealth, the skill would immediately come to an end. Nia Yan focused his eyes on the berserker's throat, waited for the right moment, and then pounced. Vital strike. The dagger slashed across the berserker's neck, sending blood gushing out. -51. He's here, the berserker cried out in alarm. He quickly retreated back and drank the basic health potion that he had in his hand. However, how could Nia Yan let this berserker get away? He lunged forward and stabbed his dagger into the berserker's chest, then followed up with lacerate. His dagger ruthlessly cut into his opponent's flesh. The berserker's health, which just been replenished, was once again depleted. Now the berserker was at low health and suffering from the bleed effect of lacerate. You're courting death. Niayan's movements were so quick that the nearby paladin had only now reacted. He charged towards Niayan and slashed down with his sword, which was burning with a radiant splendor. Niayan had planned on continuing to pursue the berserker, but the paladin coming up from behind forced him to change his plans. Niayan's max health wasn't very high, so he didn't dare neglect the oncoming attack. Without a further thought, he dodged to the side, avoiding the blow. The paladin quickly put himself between Niayan and the berserker, saving his teammate's life. Where is he? He's over there. All of the 10 or so members of the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild who were in the surrounding area came rushing over. Several of them shot spells in Niayan's direction. When Niayan looked at his current situation, he had no choice but to forget about killing the berserker. Instead of continuing his pursuit, he rolled to the side and dodged the incoming spells. By the time he stood up, the berserker had already run away. Bang! 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 Niayan's location was bombarded with spells. Most of them missed their target and harmlessly exploded off the surrounding trees. However, one of them managed to hit Niayan. -23. With the nimbleness of a hare, Niayan madly dashed through the thickets and quickly put more than 20 meters between himself and the mages behind. He would soon be out of their attack range. At this moment, the berserker who thought he was a safe distance away from the combat was actually not all that safe. Damn it, I'm bleeding, the berserker gloomily cursed. His basic health potion was still on cooldown, so he had to resort to drinking a basic recovery potion. However, not even the healing from the potion could overcome the constant damage from bleeding. -5, +3, -5, +3, -5. In the end, his struggle was futile. 5 seconds after drinking the potion, the berserker's health fell to 0 and he died. With his death, Niayan had taken out yet another one of the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild's members. However, the berserker suffered a bit of injustice in his death. Unlike the others who died in combat, he just watched as his own health bled out until he died. The fighter felt a slight chill run down his spine. This thief by the name of Niayan, Nirvana Flame, truly was just too terrifying. They had no way of restraining him. The fighter picked up the equipment that the berserker dropped, a bronze-grade piece of armor. Thankfully for them, it didn't end up in Niayan's hands. Though Niayan had taken out one of his opponents, he wasn't out of danger just yet. Up ahead, a battle thief and a paladin blocked his way forward. Meanwhile, several spells were being launched at him from behind. Seeing this, Niayan hurriedly applied a bandage to himself. +20, +20, +20. Bang! 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 -23, -22, -20. A bombardment of spells smashed into Niayan, interrupting the healing from his bandages. Niayan lowered his head and glanced at his health bar, 17 health remaining. While doing this, he also sucked in his stomach and made some slight maneuvers, causing 2 attacks to pass through empty air. The paladin's greatsword had just barely grazed Niayan's cheek as it streaked by, and the battle thief's dagger had harmlessly cut into the air where his stomach had been moments prior. What mattered most in a direct confrontation such as this one was who had sharper eyes and quicker hands. This was because these confrontations would finish in mere seconds. Though in this confrontation, it was evident that Niayan's skills were much higher. He broke through the blockade that the battle thief and paladin had formed and disappeared into the thickets. In doing so, he had put even more space between himself and his opponents. Damn, this bastard's fast. Fuck. We let him escape again. They had been unable to gain any sort of advantage against Niayan, even when engaging him in close combat. In the end, he escaped after taking the berserker's life, putting the total number of dead to 6. One after another, the members of the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild were being killed off by Niayan. Forget it. Let's just head back, the fighter suggested. Unexpectedly, he no longer wished to pursue such an abnormal person like Niayan any further. Everyone who heard this looked at each other with gloomy expressions. All right. A hint of helplessness could be heard in their tone. Niayan had already successfully escaped, so what else could they do? Thus, the players from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild gathered into groups and departed. While leaving, they didn't dare move more than 2 meters away from their teammates, as they were still fearful that Niayan might suddenly emerge from hiding again. I killed another one of their members, a berserker this time. Also, their group has just left, Niayan informed Tang Yao. Despite being encircled by over 10 people, Niayan was still able to kill one of their members and then successfully escape. What kind of unimaginably impressive feat was this? Tang Yao burned with excitement as he thought about it. He felt it was a pity that he had chosen to be an arcane mage instead of a thief. Brother! You should continue taking care of me in the future. Tang Yao laughed happily. The tree that he could rely on for shade was truly refreshing. No problem, Nia Yan replied straightforwardly. Just as distance determined the stamina of a horse, time would also reveal a person's true nature. When Nia Yan was at his lowest in his past life, he watched as people deserted him left and right. It was then that he finally understood what it truly meant to have a brother. Brothers would always put each other first. Naturally, he would do the same for Tang Yao. After the players from the Radiant Sacred Flame Guild left, Nia Yan made his way over to the cliff face where the rock spider cave was located. The cave entrance was well hidden and emanated a serene darkness. Who knew where it would lead to? Inside, long strands of silk hung from the cave walls and stalagmites above. This silk resembled a veil of vines as it hid the interior of the cave from view. This was a level 5 area. The number of players who were able to train in this area were few. Rock Spider Cave, huh? This place is pretty good, Nia Yan muttered to himself as he recollected all the information from his past life regarding the cave. Brushing away the webs outside, Nia Yan made his way into the cave. As he went deeper, the floor became slightly muddy and the main entrance began branching off into numerous narrow pathways. Every single one of the rock spiders in this area were level 5 monsters. If he were to face them one-on-one, then perhaps he would be able to handle them. However, in the event that he encountered more than one, he could only flee for his life. Scritch! Scritch! Sharp cries could be heard reverberating from the depths of the cave until they finally faded away. All that remained was an eerie chill from the occasional gust of cold wind that blew in from the depths of the cave. Tell me your coordinates, Nia Yan said through the voice call. 352.238.235, be careful though, there's over 10 rock spiders blocking the way here. Are you sure you can reach me? I won't know if I don't try. Nia Yan glanced at his current coordinates and found that he wasn't far from Tang Yao. After finishing his conversation, he continued to carefully move through the tunnels. Scritch! Scritch! Nia Yan heard a sharp cry echo out from just an earshot away. A nearby rock spider had climbed down from the walls and pounced at him. Nia Yan hurriedly moved backwards after noticing that the spider had launched itself at him. After avoiding the pounce, Nia Yan then stepped forward and retaliated with concussive strike. The rock spider sunk into a dazed state. Rock spider, level 5. Health, 108/130. Using the momentum from his previous attack, Nia Yan followed up with several more strikes. In addition, he also used Assassinate, Lacerate, and Vital Strike. The rock spider continuously threw itself at Nia Yan and attacked. It was 2 levels higher than him, and thus its damage was fairly high. Every attack that hit dealt at least 30 damage to him. Nia Yan started falling back while still keeping the rock spider within his attack range. As he retreated, he would repeatedly stab his dagger into the spider. After 20 seconds of fighting like this, the spider collapsed on the ground and let out a miserable shriek. Nia Yan used this short respite to glance at his health bar. He only had around 20% remaining. It appeared even a single rock spider was still a danger to him. However, there was one upside to fighting them: rock spiders granted a great deal of experience upon death. Each spider gave 280 experience. The amount alone was quite generous. The only downside was that no useful drops came from these rock spiders. Nia Yan sat down to rest and then ate some bread. Slowly but surely, his health recovered to full and all his skills came off cooldown. With his health recovered and skills once again ready for use, Nia Yan stood up and continued advancing into the darkness of the cave. Up ahead, he noticed 3 rock spiders moving about. After observing the location of each spider, Nia Yan took out his crossbow. He moved close to the nearby wall and aimed at the closest rock spider. Whoosh! 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 A line of bolts pierced through the air as they shot out towards their target. -5, -3, -5. 3 damage values floated upward above the spider's head. After taking the hits, the spider rushed over to where Nia Yan was hiding. Scritch! Scritch! It let out a furious shriek as it pounced towards the one who had injured it. With this, Nia Yan had succeeded in drawing out a single rock spider without alerting its companions. When the spider neared his location, he drew his dagger and rushed out to greet it. The two engaged in close combat, with Nia Yan dishing out consecutive attacks. As they fought, numerous damage values appeared one after another above the spider's head. Within 20 seconds, the rock spider was dead. Surprisingly, this spider had dropped something. Nia Yen walked over and picked up the loot, a single copper. After waiting for his health to recover, Nia Yen used his crossbow to draw out the other spiders and kill them one by one, just as he had earlier. Using this tactic, he continued to make his way forward. By the time he finally arrived at Tang Yao's coordinates, several more spiders had died by his hands. Up ahead there was a wide area where many tunnels intersected. In that area no less than 10 rock spiders could be seen wandering around. Nia Yen didn't immediately rush in, instead he just observed the surroundings. It seemed as though passing through this area safely would be quite difficult. Especially considering that he might draw out more than one spider if he were to use his crossbow like before. 2 of them, huh? Can't say for sure if I'll be able to deal with them, Nia Yen thought to himself. He did have one plan in mind, but it required the use of one of his bandages. There was a problem with this plan though, he didn't have many bandages left. Not to mention that a single intermediate combat bandage would cost him upwards of 20 coppers in materials. An average person would be hard-pressed to use even a single one due to the high cost. Numerous spiders had converged within the wide space where the tunnels intersected. They were constantly patrolling the area, which meant that their positions were ever-changing. Nia Yen patiently waited for an opportunity to arise. He didn't need to wait long. About half a minute later, the spiders began congregating towards the center. It was then that Nia Yen noticed there was one lone spider that had lagged behind. It loitered off to the side, not too far from where he was. Nia Yan's eyes lit up. This was his chance. There was no time to lose. He raised his crossbow, aimed at the lone spider, and fired. Pa! 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 3 crossbow bolts lodged themselves into their target, enraging it. The spider immediately turned to face its aggressor and charged. Fortunately, none of the other spiders followed, thus, Nia Yen welcomed its assault with open arms. When their skirmish reached its conclusion, the spider fell to the ground, dead. Nia Yen walked over to its corpse and picked up the single piece of equipment it dropped as loot, a white grade level 5 dark leather thief tunic. The drop rates for equipment were extremely low regardless of which profession it belonged to the extent that prices for equipment always remained high. For instance, if this leather tunic were to be placed on the marketplace, it would sell for at least 6 or 7 coppers. Nia Yen tossed the leather tunic into his knapsack, then went back to waiting for another opportunity. Within the span of roughly 6 minutes, he had drawn out and killed another 3 spiders. Afterward, Nia Yen tallied up the remaining monsters and found that there were still 12 remaining. Unfortunately, these spiders were clumped too closely to be drawn out one at a time. Nia Yen searched for quite some time but was unable to find a suitable position to repeat his earlier tactics. This seems to be the best position, though it's still a bit lacking. I suppose I'll give it a shot from here, though things might get a little dangerous. Nia Yen raised his crossbow once more and fired. Subsequently, 3 bolts were sent piercing through the air. -5, -5, -5. These bolts struck the body of a nearby rock spider. Scritch! Scritch! The spider furiously cried out as it charged towards the one who had harmed it. Unlike the previous spiders he had lured, however, this one was being followed closely from behind by another. I aggroed 2 of them. Nia Yan's heart tightened as he made a hasty retreat back to one of the narrow tunnels within the cave. The narrowness of this passage meant there would be no room for 2 spiders to move side by side. When they drew close enough, Nia Yen pulled out his dagger. He directly engaged the rock spider he had aggroed first and unleashed a continuous chain of attack upon it. The spider repeatedly lunged at Nia Yen. One after another, a line of damage values floated up above Nia Yan's head as they exchanged blows. 92%, 87%, 72%. Slowly but surely, Nia Yan's health continued to fall. While in combat, Nia Yen made sure to maintain awareness of both his surroundings and the positioning of his footsteps. Currently, the only spider capable of attacking him in the narrow tunnel was the one he aggroed first. As for its partner, who had closely followed from behind, it could do nothing more than cry out helplessly. The spider met its end when Nia Yen finally finished it off with Vital Strike. He glanced at his health bar. Around a quarter of his health remained, then quickly retreated back from his current position. Almost immediately after the first spider was killed, its ally who had been helplessly crying from behind lunged forward. Seeing this, Nia Yen hastened his retreat and began applying a combat bandage. Plus 20, plus 20, plus 20. With each passing second, his health was being restored by a large amount. The rock spider repeatedly lunged at Nie Yen as the latter dodged and leaped back in retreat. However, he soon reached an impasse. Approximately 5 meters behind him, there was another spider. If Nie Yen were to continue moving like he was, then it would undoubtedly be aggroed. Thus, retreating was no longer an option. By this time, his health had been restored to 80%, so he raised his dagger and ran forward to face the spider head-on. The two parties finally met and clashed. Unfortunately, all of Nie Yan's skills had yet to come off cooldown. Met with such a situation, all he could do was lash out with regular stabs and slashes. After evading the spider's lunge, Nie Yan would step forward and counter with successive attacks. Under the barrage of violent attacks from the spider, Nie Yan's health was quickly dropping. Whereas the spider currently had over 60% of its health remaining, Nie Yan only had a third left. In the end, the damage that could be dealt with regular attacks was rather limited. After all, thieves were a profession that relied heavily on their skills to deal damage. 20 seconds later, Assassinate, Lacerate, and Vital Strike had finally come off cooldown. For Nie Yan, this was undoubtedly a great boon. Not even a moment later, the rock spider came leaping forward while baring its fangs. This is my chance. Nie Yan slipped his dagger past the spider's legs and aimed directly for its head, all while it was still leaping through the air. After his dagger was implanted deeply within the spider's eye, Nie Yan used the momentum to ruthlessly slash outwards, causing a thick green liquid to ooze from its mutilated head. Despite this, the rock spider still managed to use one of its legs to pierce through Nie Yan's shoulder, dealing 33 damage and sending a number floating above his head. Nie Yan quickly glanced at his health bar and found that he had a little over a tenth of his health remaining. That was dangerous. Plus 30. He had hastily pulled out a basic health potion and gulped down its contents. His last hit with Vital Strike had taken out 39 points from the spider's health, but the fight still wasn't over. The rock spider dashed towards Nie Yan with the intent of ramming into him. When the two collided, the spider crashed into Nie Yan's chest and dealt 35 damage to him. After receiving the blow, Nie Yan quickly retreated back several steps. The rock spider turned its body to face where its opponent had retreated. Nie Yan swept his eyes over the spider's health bar and noticed it that only had 15 health remaining. In comparison, after drinking the basic health potion and taking the spider's attack directly, he barely had a tenth of his health left. Right now, if one of the spider's attacks were to even slightly graze him, then he would likely meet his end. He quickly took several more steps back as the spider lunged in pursuit. If he were to engage this spider, and if their battle was to be anything like the last, then it would be a mutually assured destruction. -5, -5. As the spider pounced forward, 2 damage values popped up above its head one after another. In its final moments, the spider raised its forelimbs and attempted to stab Nie Yan as its lumbering body descended forward. Nie Yan instantly reacted and dodged the spider's final attack by rolling. Crash. The spider's body smashed into the ground beside him, creating a large pit in the earth. If he had been just a millisecond too slow, then he would have been struck by that attack. Nie Yan broke out into a cold sweat as he thought of how he had just narrowly escaped death. -5. Finally, the spider's health had been bled dry. The legs that had been struggling to get up earlier suddenly lost all their ability to support the main body, causing the spider to collapse to the ground. System, you've gained 280 experience points. The second rock spider had finally met its end. Using this short respite, Nie Yan breathed a sigh of relief. Using both arms to support himself, he pushed his body off the ground and propped himself up against the cave wall. Soon, his health gradually started to recover. Pitifully, this spider hadn't dropped even a single item upon death. What's worse was that he had been forced to expend a combat bandage against a common mob like this rock spider. The cost of crafting a single bandage was such that the payout of this battle wasn't worth his efforts. After a few moments of rest, his health was at last fully restored. That was just too dangerous. If I'm going to lure out more rock spiders, then I should definitely avoid aggroing more than one of them at a time. Nie Yan picked himself up off the ground and walked over to the intersection. There was a lot more space to maneuver there now, as only 10 spiders remained. However, these 10 spiders were moving together in groups of 2 or 3, which made it incredibly difficult for Nie Yan to find an opportunity to strike. At least there's more room to move around now. I should be able to use stealth to make my way through here. At Stealth's current level, I should be able to pass within a meter of these spiders without being detected. Gradually, Nia Yan's body became increasingly transparent until it completely blended in with the darkness of the cave. Shortly after, he began to slowly make his way forward. As he moved, Nia Yan spotted 3 spiders approaching him from behind. One was off to his left, about 3 meters away. The other 2 were off to his right, about 5 meters away. Nia Yan carefully observed the positions of each spider and determined their patrol routes as he continued moving ahead. Suddenly, 2 spiders crawled until they were just 2 meters away from his current position. Seeing this, Nia Yan quickly halted his footsteps. After a short period of time, the 2 spiders slowly moved on without having noticed his presence. While Nia Yan was moving forward, he suddenly happened to spot something over in the corner of the room. Nestled between several large rocks was a single chest that faintly glowed with a silver light. The rocks had obstructed his line of view, thus he was only able to see the edge of the silver chest. Son of AB*TCH, they really hit it well. Unexpectedly, it's a silver treasure chest. Nia Yan's heart rate involuntarily sped up. At the same time, 3 spiders abruptly halted their movements and looked around. These actions were akin to a bucket of cold water being dumped over his head, causing him to immediately calm down. Right now, it was still too soon to get excited. The duration of stealth was finite, and he couldn't afford the luxury of spending the time to open the chest. Thus, he was forced to give up on the chest and leave it for another time. Nia Yan maintained his breathing. Having not discovered anything, the 3 spiders resumed their patrols and crawled further and further away. Nia Yan carefully crept his way around the remaining spiders until finally making it out of danger. He breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of work definitely wasn't suited for an average person. After proceeding forward for a while longer, Nia Yan glanced at his coordinates. Finally, I'm here. Tang Yao, where are you? The next moment, a figure slowly emerged from the nearby shadows. Who knew what hole this guy had deeply burrowed himself into? By the time he finally crawled out, his body was completely covered in dirt. Haha, not bad, you hid yourself pretty well, Nia Yan said with a smile. Tang Yao patted the dirt off his body and gloomily replied, don't say any more. Anyways, there were so many rock spiders over there. How'd you manage to get through? Stealth, Nia Yan answered back. You can even do that? Tang Yao's mind went blank for a moment. That intersection was littered with rock spiders. How the hell could a thief stealth their way through that? It was an incredibly difficult task to pull off.